autumn we have. We usually say we have like a week of autumn and a week of spring. The rest is winter.
It's
And
winter?
a tiny bit of summer.
Oh, I feel for you, Sarah. I'm right there with you. Oh my goodness.
But I must say one thing on the full moon. It was amazing because on Monday, which was the 21st, it coincided with the actual full moon, which they usually call then the harvest moon. And in London at the Globe Theatre, the Swedish company, the friend outsiders go well with doors, had the first international concert that was sold out in 2 minutes for the actual tickets, and there were hundreds of thousands who bought tickets online from 71 countries. And you saw the full moon over the globe. It was the Shakespeare Globe Theatre, so it was like really amazing. Yeah. And a historic moment for art actually getting the money. So happy week for me. How's everyone else?
You still have a little bit of the sound of summer in your voice, Sarah. Like, get ready, everybody. Here comes the depressed Swedes. It's coming soon. Oh my goodness!
The Indian side of me will just get out of here.
It's. I always laugh when I get off the airplane. When you travel from Thailand to Stockholm, and you land at the airport at Arlanda, and then you walk into, and then everyone's heads are walking down, head down. Everyone's in black. It looks like there's a funeral going on or something. It's like this incredible.
Got that blinders on.
Yes, totally.
Did you say hi?
Yes, no. Everyone's in this stupor, of winter, surviving the winter.
It makes me wonder why the Scandinavians chose Minneapolis or Minnesota to settle, because it's so similar. It's like, go someplace else.
I think why aren't they in Florida? Yeah,
you need to talk to your ancestors.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good point.
They couldn't adjust to the tropical weather. It's just too awkward. So, let's
top of the hour.
Top of the hour, right on time.
About?
Yeah. Let's see. Top story at this moment. New York Times says they have sources that last month, some guy named Mark Zuckerberg agreed to show users positive stories about Facebook via newsfeed. Facebook says it ran only a small test with labeled posts. Mark Zuckerberg, the chief executive, has signed off on an effort to show users pro-Facebook stories to distance himself from scandals. Let's see what this is about. It says, he signed off last month on a new initiative codenamed Project Amplify. The effort, which was hatched at an internal meeting in January, had a specific purpose. Well, that took a while. It was hatched in January, and then it went into effect in August. It had a specific purpose: to use Facebook's newsfeed, the site's most important digital real estate, to show people positive stories about Facebook. The idea was that pushing pro-Facebook news items, some of them written by the company, would improve its image in the eyes of its users. 3 people with knowledge of the effort said, but the move was sensitive because Facebook had not previously positioned the newsfeed as a place where it burnished its own reputation. Several executives at the meeting were shocked by the proposal. One attendee said, Project Amplify punctuated a series of decisions that Facebook has made this year to aggressively reshape its image. Since that January meeting, the company has begun a multi-pronged effort to change its narrative by distancing Mr. Zuckerberg from scandals, reducing outsiders' access to internal data, like the researchers, which, by the way, there was another article about precisely that yesterday. Yesterday, 24 hours ago, Facebook changed its code to essentially disable the researchers' browser extension plugins that they're using to collect the data. So that kind of rings sounds like to make sense. Reducing outsiders' access to internal data. Yeah, well, we read that headline yesterday. You changed your code to kind of neutralize the ability of the browser extensions to collect data, bearing a potentially negative report about its content and increasing its own advertising to showcase its brand. The moves amount to a broad shift in strategy. For years, Facebook confronted crisis after crisis over privacy, misinformation, and hate speech on its platform by publicly apologizing. Mr. Zuckerberg personally took responsibility for the Russian interference on the site during the 2016 presidential election and has loudly stood up for free speech online. Facebook also promised transparency into the way that it operated. But the drumbeat of criticism on issues as varied as racist speech and vaccine misinformation has not relented. Disgruntled Facebook employees have added to the furor by speaking out against their employer and leaking internal documents. Last week, the Wall Street Journal published articles based on such documents that showed Facebook knew about many of the harms it was causing. So Facebook executives, concluding that their methods had done little to quell criticism or win supporters, decided earlier this year to go on the offensive, said 6 current and former employees who declined to be identified for fear of reprisal. And here's the quote: "They're realizing that no one else is going to come to their defense, so they need to do it and say it themselves," says Katie Harbath, a former Facebook public policy director. Oh, snap. Look at the New York Times. Getting that's a juicy quote right there, and a named source. Holy cow, and a super credible source. A former Facebook public policy director.
I know her, by the way. And I said to her 5 years ago that she would be judged for what she did at Facebook.
The changes have involved Facebook executives. From its marketing, communications, policy, and integrity teams. Alex Schultz, a 14-year company veteran who was named chief marketing officer last year, has also been influential in the image reshaping effort, said 5 people who worked with him. But at least one of the decisions was driven by Mr. Zuckerberg, and all were approved by him, 3 people said. Joe Osborne, a Facebook spokesman, denied the company had changed its approach. People deserve to know the steps we're taking to address the different issues facing our company, and we're going to share those steps widely, he said in a comment. Then, so before we jump into a hot potato on that one, somebody on stage DM'd me yesterday a related article that is absolutely worth sharing before we break out into a little conversation about this. And here it is. That Mr. Zuckerberg, this is from New York Magazine, The New Yorker. Or no, the New York, not the New Yorker. And it's about it's this book about Peter Thiel. And in this book about Peter Thiel, there's an interesting part that people have found and are now sharing. And somebody sent it to me. And it says, in 2019, 2 years ago, just before COVID, while on a trip to Washington, D.C. to answer questions from Congress about his digital currency, Peter Thiel joined Mark Zuckerberg and Jared Kushner and Trump and their spouses at the White House. The specifics of the discussion were secret, but as I report in my book, Peter Thiel later told The Confident that Zuckerberg came to an understanding with Jared Kushner during the meal. Facebook, Kushner promised, would avoid Zuckerberg promised would avoid fact-checking political speech, thus allowing the Trump campaign to claim whatever it wanted and not fact-check Trump on all of his, loose grip of the facts. And in return, the Trump administration would lay off of heavy-handed regulations against Facebook. Facebook had long seen itself as a government unto itself. Now, thanks to the understanding brokered by Peter Thiel, the site would push what the Thiel Confident called state-sanctioned conservatism. So they had a little special deal with Trump. They wouldn't fact-check Trump, and Trump wouldn't regulate Facebook. And I think that story is actually, now that I think about it, quite different. I mean, it fits in line with the Wall Street Journal posts that there's shady behavior going on, but this one's a little bit different. This whole idea of it's a little glimpse into what goes on behind the scenes and adds a bit of, it's still not fully, it's in the New York and it's a confidant of Peter Thiel's, an unnamed source, mind you, but certainly seems to add up. There was a notable, no real, although ironically,
Tyler, there's that new book coming out on Peter Thiel right now, and they're saying all of this, that he's just like the Koch brothers and his leanings.
Yeah.
So totally supporting what you're saying.
Max Chafkin. Okay, so anyway, that's the biggest story of the day. The Facebook has a campaign to fix its own image, and I kind of like the quote of "No one's going to do it for them," so they're doing it themselves on their own platform. And it seems like an interesting way for the New York. Oh, this is from. I'm sorry. This is from that whole thing I read was from the New York Times. Oh, I did say that. My head is blurry this morning. So, Zuckerberg agreed to show users positive stories about Facebook via the newsfeed. Okay, but then they're saying it was only a test. Okay, who knows?
Just a bit tangential to that, the Washington Post announced a couple of days ago that they're hiring 41 editors to focus on breaking news, investigative reporting, doing deeper dives, and as well as just innovations around digital newsmaking. So I think it's really interesting that first of all, just in talking with my friends in journalism, it's a pretty significant hire. And then secondly, just given the thematic areas that they're focusing on, I can imagine that these types of stories will only continue to come to light because they'll have more resources internally to be able to do that.
So there's another. I'm looking at the list of stories, the top stories. That's number 1. Number 2 is about the iPhone. Number 3, number 4, number 5 is from Engadget, and it says Facebook's oversight board. And this is the committee that was assembled to help make decisions around should Trump be allowed to stay and be kept off the platform or be allowed back on the platform. Anyway, this Facebook's oversight board wants Facebook to explain its cross-check system, which reportedly lets celebrities, politicians, and others break its rules, which was revealed by the Wall Street Journal last week, and as one of the 6 Facebook files of insider information that was revealed. And makes sense. Oversight board absolutely should do that because that's kind of their jurisdiction, is figuring out who should be penalized or not. And what's this special VIP list you have here that gives immunity to digital diplomats of some sort? So that certainly makes sense that they would want to know all about that. So that's the 5th article. And going back to the second, it's an iPhone 13 review from The Verge, where they say it has excellent cameras and battery life. But the front camera is relatively unchanged. The refresh rate is rather standard. That's for the 13. The 13 Pro, they say, has incredible cameras, improved battery, and high refresh display. But front camera is average, no USB-C, and the cinematic mode is rather limited. Okay, so the third biggest story then is that iOS 15.1 beta, now that everyone's downloading iOS 15 and testing out all of its new features, there's already working on iOS 15.1 beta, and this beta lets users store their verifiable health records, including COVID-19 vaccination cards and test results in the Health app. There you go. And then the next one from the Washington Post says they have sources that the FBI refrained from sharing a ransomware decryptor with businesses for almost 3 weeks as it carried out an operation to disrupt the Revel gang, which was the Colonial Pipeline hacking outfit. But okay, that makes sense. Like, the FBI does a lot of stuff that they don't necessarily inform people about. It's kind of kids don't always need to know what the parents are up to in their own best interests. So the FBI refrained for almost 3 weeks from helping to unlock the computers of hundreds of businesses and institutions hobbled by a major ransomware attack this summer, even though the Bureau had secretly obtained the digital key needed to do so, according to several current and former U.S. officials. Yes. And they probably had very good reasons for doing that, to figure out who's behind the hacks. And if they had helped unlock the computers, then the bad dudes would have gotten away and done countless more hacks. There's usually good reason for these things. So the key was obtained through access to the servers of the Russian-based criminal gang behind the July attack. Deploying it immediately could have helped the victims, including schools and hospitals, avoid what analysts estimate was millions of dollars in recovery costs. But the FBI held onto the key, with the agreement of other agencies, in part because it was planning to carry out an operation to disrupt the hackers, a group known as Rebel, and the Bureau did not want to tip them off. Yeah, exactly. This is common sense type shit, Washington Post. You know, you're trying to make this out
Hey,
the
Tyler, I'll jump
FBI is
in.
against hospitals or some shit like this. Yeah.
No, jumping on that one is that it's our evil, and the question was, should they have released the encryption key earlier, because it's the FBI that released it to Kaseya. It's that supplier chain attack.
Yeah.
Earlier, and the FBI's response is no, way to test it and make sure it works. It was part of a deeper, as you're explaining, it was a deeper investigation, and they're saying, so it's exactly what you're saying, is that's why they withheld it versus releasing it earlier for Kaseya. So it's that whole breach.
Uh-huh. It says also a government assessment found the harm was not as severe as initially feared. The planned takedown never occurred because in mid-July, our evil's platform went offline without U.S. government intervention, and the hackers disappeared before the FBI had a chance to execute its plan. The previously unreported episode highlights the trade-offs law enforcement officials face between trying to damage cyber criminal networks and promptly helping the victims of ransomware. Malware that encrypts data on computers. The White House has made fighting ransomware a priority, and President Biden has urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to rein in ransomware criminals operating out of Russia. So they moved to the Baltics, naturally. And then the Washington Post, oh dear Lord, that provides this quote.
Wait, actually, Tyler, they went on vacation because they're European, and so they went on vacation for 2 months, and they're also not governed by Amazon's hourly wages and all of that.
Right.
Which is why our evil went on vacation, and they just came back like last week.
Yes, naturally. So the quote here is, the questions we ask each time are, what would be the value of a key if disclosed? How many victims are there? Who could be helped, etc. Anyway, just why they feel the need to write these headlines. This is a clickbait headline. The FBI held back important stuff that could have helped save lives at hospitals and all this. Just come the fuck on. It's like you're implying they don't employ common sense in their decision making, and like they're, malevolent. Anyway, I understand you guys are desperate for clicks, but come on, you're tarnishing government, very important government agencies in your desperate needs for, advertising clicks. So the next one is number 5, the one we already covered. Facebook's oversight board wants the company to explain its cross-check VIP list. So on to number 6, Mac OS is susceptible to running arbitrary code. That means malware. That means a hack. That means bad people running software on your computer without your knowledge. So macOS is susceptible to running arbitrary code when a user opens a malicious interlock file, and Apple's first attempts to silently fix the issue failed. Security researchers, otherwise known as hackers, disclosed today a new vulnerability in Apple's macOS Finder, which makes it possible for attackers to run arbitrary commands, meaning share that person's screen with me type commands. So, Apples are vulnerable. This is hardly big news, but I guess it's big news in so much as Apple likes to position itself as not having these problems when in reality it does. So, next up from CNBC, that the Treasury Department sanctions cryptocurrency exchange called Suex for helping facilitate and launder transactions from at least 8 ransomware gangs. so to speak. So the U.S. Treasury Department announced Tuesday it will sanction a cryptocurrency exchange for its alleged role in laundering ransoms from cyber attacks. There you go. It's digital mafia behavior here. So they're gonna get that all makes sense. No big surprise there. Next one up from Politico. Also about Facebook, shareholders allege that Facebook conducted its $5 billion Cambridge Analytica settlement on the FTC, dropping plans to sue and depose Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook conditioned. Hold on here. Let's get this one open. Facebook conditioned its $5 billion payment to the FTC to resolve the Cambridge Analytica data leak probe on the agency dropping plans to sue Mark Zuckerberg individually, and shareholders allege in a lawsuit. Okay, so what's wrong with that exactly? In suits made public Tuesday, two groups of shareholders claimed that members of Facebook's board allowed the company to overpay on its fine in order to protect Mark Zuckerberg, the company's founder and largest shareholder.
So what they're saying, Tyler, even though that's probably a common type of settlement with companies that protect the CEOs, is that basically the shareholders had to pay, to cover up the CEO, and they're just saying we can pay less. Yeah.
The complaints, which cite internal discussions among Facebook board members, were filed in Delaware court last month. Zuckerberg, Sandberg, and other Facebook directors agreed to authorize a multi-billion settlement with the FTC as an express quid pro quo to protect Zuckerberg from being named in the FTC's complaint, made subject to personal liability or even required to sit for a deposition. The FTC has never disclosed that it originally planned to name Zuckerberg personally in the lawsuit, so good luck winning this one. And the agency's two Democrats at the time voted against the settlement in part because the lack of personal liability from the CEO. That's the interesting part to me here is, that now it's going to be interesting with if the politicians start going after Mark Zuckerberg a little more personally, like in the headlines we read earlier today, where it says he personally, has a hand in the decision to start pumping positive sunshine stories about Facebook on Facebook, according to the sources for the New York Times. Do we not then assume he has a direct hand in nearly every considerable decision? He's kind of notoriously has a sort of firm grip on any notable decision in the company. So maybe it's perhaps a matter of time before he gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar and gets named, personally liable or responsible.
But this whole thing with personally liable, I mean, I've been on corporate boards. It's almost impossible to break a corporate veil absent criminal conduct. So, I mean, there's a really wide berth for, business decisions, even poor ones. And the only time I've ever seen a corporate veil broken where board members or executives, board members who were not criminally liable, okay, was WorldCom. Now, Bernie Ebbers went to jail, okay, but they got money out of some of the board members without having to criminally indict them. Maybe they threatened them with a criminal indictment, for supposedly knowing maybe what was going on. But it's unless there's a criminal case, the fact that just behaving badly or making bad decisions, usually you're covered by your D&O insurance.
But what if I was going to ask you about the details here, like what if you willfully withhold information from your board?
That's a civil infraction. That's not a criminal infraction, unless it.
But
really
would your D&O insurance cover that? That's my question.
Oh, maybe not in that case. No.
That's the whole ticket, right? Is that you get D&O insurance, director and officer insurance for those that don't understand, and I'm learning this too. Is to protect. Usually, there's what's an indemnity clause that's issued to directors and officers of a company, but you also still need insurance. So you have indemnity clauses usually, but then you need your insurance. And the question is if you actually withhold information from your board, is that a breach of your responsibility, and does that make your insurance not valid? And then therefore, does that open up you to personal liability as a director or an officer?
Yeah, and then that would actually, I think, center on whether, because no CEO tells the board everything, because otherwise you never get done with the board meeting. So I think it would depend on the materiality of what was withheld. It just can't be just anything.
Okay, next up. The next one is the ongoing Activision Blizzard drama takes a new turn here as Blizzard's chief legal officer leaves amid a series of high-level departures, and right at a time when that person's playing a key role here. Claire Hart, who has been the company's top lawyer for 3 years, resigned Friday. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Hart, who had been in the role for 3 years, previously clocked a decade at Google, according to LinkedIn, did not cite a reason for her resignation. Well, I think I could think of a reason why she's departing, saying only that the past 3 years have been full of unexpected twists and turns. But I feel honored to have worked with and met so many great people at Blizzard and across the Activision Blizzard business. Outside of a short break, Hart did not mention what's next in the pipeline. No, she doesn't know what's next in the pipeline. She's leaving a burning dumpster fire. Were you expecting her? Oh, I have a book deal. I have a movie script. I'm halfway through, and I'm pregnant. I got all these other things. No, she's got nothing else to do. She's getting out of a fucking collapsing building. What are you talking? What did you expect her to say? She did not mention what's next in the pipeline. There is nothing next in the pipeline. She's running out of a burning building with her cat, between her arms. What? It's impossible to ignore the circumstances in which Blizzard has lost its top lawyer. Yeah. Well, on July 20th, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing sued Activision Blizzard over several violations of state civil rights and equal pay laws. And then there was a new investigation yesterday from the SEC. And then there's, a unionization effort underway. And it's just, shit's getting really uncomfortable for the legal team over there at Activision. And
you see the stock action on this thing today? It was down 20%. That was 6 months. That was in 6 months. It wasn't today. Never mind. 6 months. I was like, whoa.
I think she would benefit from spending a few days with you, Tyler.
Yeah.
Just completely unplug and disappear.
Come on over. I got the solution over here. Oh man. Wow. That's something rough going over there at Activision Blizzard. Okay, next one.
I keep on trying to get my old roommate who was there up, but he's never here at the right time.
The next one is from Bloomberg. It says, following the Wall Street Journal's investigation series, have you noticed that the New York Times and Bloomberg and the Washington Post are all talking about the Wall Street Journal's, files about Facebook? It's because the journalists, kind of, it's a bit of dogpiling. They want to get the word out. This is, a feather in the cap of the tech press, who really don't like Facebook specifically. I mean, they don't really care for Google. They don't really care for Apple. They don't really have that big of a beef with Apple, to be honest. Facebook, they particularly don't like out of all the big tech companies, because Facebook is the one that's most directly a threat to their business models. And Facebook is winning in that battle generally. And now they in recent days, due to the Wall Street Journal's internal information, they're kind of winning on in recent days here, and they want everyone to know. They're all kind of celebrating one of their fellow journalists getting some interesting scoops against one of their main adversaries, is one way to look at it. So it's not a surprise that this article from Bloomberg says, following the Wall Street Journal's investigation series, Facebook says it has spent over $13 billion on safety and security since the 2016 election, and 40,000 employees work on these issues. Okay, And then the question is, well, how much, if that's how much is being spent and how many team members it takes to keep the boat afloat, how many more people and how much more money would it take to actually legitimately really effectively deal with it? 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more than that to manage all of the, or would that really solve it? Or does it, it's a tricky one. Next one from Bloomberg, an in-depth look at Amazon's flagship warehouse located in Kent, Washington, and capable of processing over 1 million items per day, which is run almost entirely by software. What a surprise. You mean it's not humans shipping 1 million things a day? No, humans can't do that shit. Check out how we're dealing with COVID. So, the Bloomberg, I think this is a really interesting thing for journalists to do, to get a glimpse inside of the Borg that's soon to replace them, so they can get a real grasp of what they're competing against here. Amazon's flagship fulfillment center, the machines run the show. At BFI 4 outside Seattle, the retailer uses algorithms and robots to ship more than 1 million packages a day, vastly changing the jobs of humans in the process. And then it's a very long story, essentially. And it shows how it's largely automated. Notable lack of humans in there. And the whole thing is way more efficient than humans could ever hope to be. So welcome to your future. I wonder, did Amazon itself, not their PR team, reach out to Bloomberg and say, hey, Bloomberg, would you like to get I think I just figured it out. So do we imagine Bloomberg snuck into Amazon's warehouse and got all of these photos and videos of their employees working, the few employees that are in there?
No, this was a puff piece.
This is Amazon reached out to Bloomberg and said, hey, Bloomberg, why don't you come over to you want to check out our flagship fulfillment center, our absolute creme de la creme facility, and have a little tour? Why don't you come over, meet the CEO, maybe have what's your favorite restaurant? Huh? How about we book you your absolute favorite place and we'll do a little tour. Maybe we'll play a little golf afterwards. Maybe you'd like a little massage, whatever's not illegal. Maybe a little charitable donation to a charity of your choice. Why don't you come over and just take a little tour of our place? We want to show you just how fully fucking automated it is. So you get a fucking glimpse of the future. And so we can let the whole world know, and all these people who are wanting to think about unionizing, let's get a nice big flagship story in Bloomberg and give everyone a nice good glimpse of what's really going on, so these unions can shit themselves when they realize this is days away. Why don't you come on over? How's 4 o'clock sound? Does that sound good for you? Great. See you then. Ta-ta. And so Bloomberg came over and did exactly that. Really nice. They obviously brought their best photographer. The photographer gets credit on the photos. Super unusually crisp, nice shots that you get with a really pro photographer with a really good lenses. That look at the article for your hair. Let me tweet it out. Tell me I'm wrong. Look at the photos. It's a full-on fucking, magazine profile. Look at the photos. I just tweeted the article to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. And scroll down to the first photo. It's a huge photo. Super high resolution, super crisp fidelity. Obviously a professional photographer with a super good camera and lens took that photo. And it's showing the boss in the warehouse, in a really nice position. And then it goes to the next photo. And the next photo is a photo of a warehouse with no people in it. And then you go to the next photo. And again, it's a photo with no people in it. And then you go to the next photo. And again, it's a photo of computer screens with nobody managing the computer screens. And then you go to the next photo. And there's one lady looking at a screen. And then you go to the next photo, and it's the warehouse with no people. And then you go to the next photo, and it's a photo of the warehouse with no people. And then you go, and then you go to the next photo, and it's a photo of the warehouse with one person in it. And then you go to the next photo, and that's it. 7 photos, 2 people. Do you think they might be trying to send a message here?
I don't know that I don't know if it's a message, but it's reality, right? The reality
Right.
is this is what's happening, right? Like
Right.
and what happens whenever the whole everything's automated all the way down to like farming. Like you just got to take the food sector, right? If automated farming, automated transportation, and automated distribution, that's a lot of centralized power for a few guys to go up to space, for example, right? You know, versus like doing some good stuff. Like we really have to. I'm glad you're bringing this up, Tyler, because that's in the near future, and then we just need to understand at least what we're getting into, which is soon you can have entire segments completely automated, and that's good. However, the power that comes with that and the centralization of the wealth and the control and the power that comes with that, we should be talking about that kind of stuff.
In the article, in terms of text, I mean, the photos speak a lot because these photos are bigger than your normal photos in a normal tech piece. These are huge, high fidelity photos. And with
it's like a Hasselblad camera.
yeah, I mean,
and you know what? And it was likely even then they probably had pre-made terms of like you're going to come in, and it was negotiated up front. Usually something like that. If they're going to give them access into all of that, they're going to be like, okay, here's what you can say, and here's what you can't say, and we probably want to see the article before, right? It's printed. I don't think it was just come in and do whatever you want to do.
let me read the key paragraphs here in this article, the 3rd and 4th paragraph, and you tell me what the message is here. More than the physical robots, the stars of Amazon's facilities are the algorithms, sets of computer instructions designed to solve specific problems. Software determines how many items a facility can handle, where each product is supposed to go, how many people are required for the night shift during the holiday rush, and which truck is best positioned to get a stick of deodorant to a customer on time. We rely on software to help us make the right decisions, says Shobi, the big factory's general manager. Automation has made it possible for each fulfillment center supervisor to manage dozens of employees. A factory-like operation became standard in the industry in 2012. A logistics warehouse manager supervised about 10 workers, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2020, after Amazon became the industry's biggest employer. There were almost twice as many frontline workers for every supervisor. The company's competitors strive to imitate its operations, but its approach to automation is also a focus of its critics, who bemoan the working conditions for hourly employees. Amazon's algorithms tell workers what to do on the warehouse floor, set productivity targets, and flag employees who fail to meet them. In interviews, workers describe feeling like cogs in a giant machine that can spit them out with little more than an automated email.
And that's the problem. See, right there, like not being treated like human. And inside of, even if you have a few employees, it's not a bad thing. But how those employees are treated, if they need to feel, they need to be treated. The machines are here to help humans to become more human and feel more human and do more human things, like interact and be happy and have family time and stuff, not just serve the machines. That's kind of what I mean. Like, I've got a lot of friends and people that worked at Amazon, and friends that are saying there's no way they're going to work there because of the well-known like the message areas work, and be robots, just like the robots they're building. You know,
well, check it out. It says this. It says Jeff Bezos sought to supplant humans with software ever since he was a mere bookseller. In one famous episode, editors working on book reviews and recommendations were replaced by code that did the same work by mining shopping patterns. Similar programs would come to manage many aspects of Amazon's operations, from ordering and placing inventory to keeping tabs on the online marketplace. A long-term bet that algorithms could perform tasks better or more consistently than human employees. In the mid-aughts, Amazon made automation a focus of the massive expansion of its packaging, shipping, and delivery division. Even small improvements were celebrated. Resumes of Amazon logistics veterans were sprinkled with references to how they knocked a penny or two off the cost of shipping an item. Right, because at the scale of millions a day, a penny per item is absolutely worth celebrating. I think most people are not familiar with this phenomena, which is And I can relate to it personally, having had a clothing company. When you're a clothing company, the cost of your manufacturing of a garment, let's call it $5 for a shirt, you're selling 50,000 units of that shirt, right? To one buyer. And then you have 10 buyers. So you have 500,000 on one garment. And 5 cents, your cost to produce that, if you can lower your cost by 5 cents, that's very, very significant, incredibly significant. So pennies matter when you have scale. And Amazon has a little more scale than my little fucking rinky dink clothing company. Like a million times more scale, a billion times more scale. So a penny times 100 billion is a lot of fucking money, an insane amount of money. So that's why saving pennies is an incredibly huge deal.
Well, there's a bigger, but they do something much more. Dude, okay, here's what's really sinister. Okay, like this is some fucked up shit. They'll go in there and utilize sellers to basically identify products that are great, and then they'll actually go create additional brands, not under Amazon, right? Just they'll find it's this. Talk about privacy, like we've talked about privacy. Why, why are we allowing these guys to get in, and you have independent entrepreneurs that come in, that do the hard part, that struggle, that find the market, that spend a lot of time to identify the market, bring a product up there.
Yeah, I don't want
What
to get
do?
into that.
They know everything, and they just hijack it, dude. And then they'll, and then they don't have to pay. They charge pay per click for their guys, right? Remember we were talking
Yeah,
about
you're
Spotify.
going into the weeds here. We're talking about the automation aspect of Amazon here. Here's what I want. The next paragraph here. It says in 2012, the company bought Kiva Systems, a maker of automated robots based in North Reading, Massachusetts. Up to that point, workers had walked the warehouse aisles, retrieving products from tall shelves, etc. Amazon wanted to use Kiva units to bring shelves of products to waiting employees, a plan that would require a complete redesign of its fulfillment centers. And this big factory that this article is about, which opened in 2016, was one of the first facilities to be purpose-built for the robots. It works like a giant assembly line with. So the article goes on and on and on about how amazing and how efficient and how much better this fully automated thing is. And my point is that this piece is a huge message to unions to good luck. Checkmate. We're giving you a preview of our queen taking your king. This is what this piece is.
Actually, this reminds me of a joke I was going around in the manufacturing world a few years back, talking about the employees of the future and how there will be two employees, a human and a dog. And the human is there to feed the dog, and the dog is there to make sure the human doesn't touch anything.
It says Amazon's assembly line practices are already becoming commonplace in the rest of the logistics industry, which is racing to retool operations previously geared to sending pallets to retail stores. Amazon's the platinum standard, it says.
Yeah, if they were really journalists, they didn't come up and do a follow-up. Hey, by the way, with this happening, how are unions going to be affected? And then what about Sherlocking? You remember how we talked about
Yeah.
Sherlocking before?
Uh-huh.
They Sherlock all of their folks in there to identify products. It's a known thing. Like I've sold on Amazon and different things. You don't go in there and go target big, huge, heavy hitting, many, many, many millions with high margin things, because they're looking for it. They're swimming for that, and they're just going to take it.
I'm kicking myself for not noticing this earlier. Shoot, what the hell did you just do? Amazon? Or Bloomberg? Hold on. The very last paragraph of the story, not surprisingly, is where the journalist is really going to try and summarize their main point, right? And try and sneak in kind of how they really feel about it. So let's jump down to see what the last paragraph says. It says Amazon's technology teams have a long-term goal of building a fully automated fulfillment center that would make such human intervention less necessary. The test for Amazon will be finding a way to make its workers think it's good news too. It says that's good news for customers expecting faster and faster delivery. The test for Amazon will be finding will be finding a way to make its workers think it's good news too. There it is. There's your piece, unions. It's going to be fully automated. We already got it up here next to our HQ, up here in Washington. You sure you want to try and unionize that shit? Go ahead. You go ahead and try that. We got a fully automated thing right up here. Here's the photos. Nice, beautiful photos. Beautiful
Wait,
full
where's it
screen photos.
located? You said right next to DC? Wait, where did they
No,
put
their
this?
headquarters is in Washington. So this is in
Okay.
Washington. And they're based in Seattle. This is also just outside of Seattle. And they want to make sure that the union leaders get a nice, big, full, crisp, professional photography of this, the future flagship factory, which will be coming to them soon, especially if they try and unionize one of their fulfillment centers.
I
And
mean,
So,
this
then
is why the
once they
Teamsters are.
replicate this all across the country, I mean, the unions is one piece of the puzzle, but like you're not going to be able to. That's just so much. They can't. Like you said, you got Garmin things that are cheap. You can't compete with them. You cannot compete with them when they're charging the sellers 30% of the transaction fee, plus they're charging them to market on there with ads. They don't have those fees, right? They don't have any of those fees, so they can just pluck up whatever products. So they have an automated system all the way through. They even have product development, R&D automated, and not even paying for it. Other people are paying for identifying what the product is and what's going to be the latest hit products out there. And that whole Spotify argument and on Apple is the same thing. And it's actually worse on Amazon because they're taking 30% of revenue plus they charge you for advertising on there, and you have to advertise against the other guys. They don't have that expense. So it's not a fair competitive market within that marketplace, and it is a marketplace, and we are living in automated times, and that is that is how you sell within there. So it's like, oh, just don't use the platform. What are you talking about? They built that platform based on the sellers' backs of all the sellers that came in there and did this, and they go out and you know what? Why don't they put the stuff that they create under Amazon brand? They don't. They don't want people to really know that. They have hundreds of brands that they developed, right? And Amazon owns them. It's not Amazon labeled, and so they're doing this. Like, we have to pay. This is what they're doing. They're automating stuff. They make people work like crazy, right? And then they disrespect the sellers. They Sherlock them. They're Sherlocking engine. That's what they are. They are a Sherlocking
yeah, we get
engine.
that. But this is a separate issue completely.
Hey, so
Yeah,
I
Maha,
mean,
you can start a room on that.
Yeah, it's
so
okay.
what
Go ahead.
what we kind of have noticed is that the unions are pivoting. They're getting creative. They're focusing on the delivery. The drivers, the gig economy, and they're realizing that the composition of their membership is going to adjust. And I don't know, Ken. I know you're a union family. I come from union family. My father was my stepfather was an electrician. So there's all these different locals. So I don't know if they're going to create a local union just for delivery drivers of local areas or what. But it's kind of obvious the Teamsters are setting their sights on diversifying their business, so to speak. They're realizing they're going to lose the truckers soon. So really, the last frontier is the last meter, and even that's getting disrupted by Neuro and other automation. So
So if these companies, if Amazon or whomever is smart, they'll do what the late Sheldon Adelson did here at the Venetian in Las Vegas. Unlike the other casinos, he doesn't have a union. All he had to do was basically offer benefits better than the union. Okay, so it was like, because he wasn't really concerned about the wages, he wasn't concerned about the benefits, he was concerned about work rules. Okay, and so you have situations, if you've been to Vegas sometimes, you're trying to flag down a cocktail waitress, and you see one, and she'll tell you it's not my station. You have to wait for the
oh
next.
yeah, no, I totally get what you
But
mean.
but not but not at his
Keep it
casino.
going. I'll
He's
be
No,
not
right
going
no,
back.
to fire you for
I
that.
got married there. I got married there. That's one of the places you'll see the suits picking up trash, meaning an executive seeing trash on the ground, picking it up off the ground and putting it in a trash can. They're dedicated and fanatical about customer service. I come from customer service. My parents are in the restaurant
Yeah.
industry. Before that, my mom slung stuff at the Hyatt Hotel next to the LAX forever. And so hospitality's in my blood, and we got married there. Me and my wife got married there. That's a special place to us because of how well managed it was. No,
Talk about the
no other place
Venetian, the
is like
Venetian, right?
yeah, the Venetian. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it smells clean all the time. It's got that floral scent. It's always clean. Everything's polite. They know you by name. I played a lot of craps in my early 20s, and the dealers knew me. They'd be like, "Hey, Chris, it's time to take a break." You know.
But I think the unions, like the strategy of stop trying to, like there's automation and trying to stopping automation is A, not going to happen. B, we as humanity want automation, but it's how you treat the humans in the whole pipeline. Like you mentioned, the gig workers, there, the few workers working at Amazon, right? How are they going to be treated, as well as the contractors? Because now, most of the people working for Amazon, guys, are not employees. They're the workers that are out there bringing the products to the market. There's no union for them, and I think that people need to focus on the power that is being massively centralized really, really quickly. And then even in car automation, right, in transportation automation, you'll have the new Byrons, right? Like you'll have somebody's going to own the automation pipeline in the transportation, and you got the Amazon on the sales side, and then you'll have a few other industries automating, whether it's food or mining or whatever it is. You'll have a few guys that are controlling the whole damn everybody, everything. And even right now, let me be honest, right? How many people are in here like you might want to say something, right? But there's a clear message. If we come out and we speak out and stuff kind of spreads, you're going to get targeted, right? You'll be targeted. So it's something that I want to mention that it's coming much faster. It's here, right? Like there you go. Amazon just showed it, right? So, and we've got to address this, and it really comes down to private. It is the data and how the data is being used, because ultimately that's where it all starts, and the rights of human beings that are interacting with the creator rights. Creator rights. There's platforms, and there needs to be creator rights, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Uber, right? These are the creators of the solution that is coming up, and once it's up and running, they just get sidelined. I'm Maher Dawudi. I'm complete.
Here we go. Next article up is from Reuters, and it's a doozy. Lithuanian government recommends ditching Chinese phones after finding Xiaomi devices with censorship capabilities that can be activated remotely. And this is for a little additional context. Lithuania and China have a little bit of a thing going on currently, because Lithuania allowed Taiwan to build its first official office in Europe, like an embassy, which kind of recognizes Taiwan. So China gave very stern words to Lithuania about this, about a European country recognizing Taiwan. And so that's just a little additional context, which maybe this article will mention. Let's see. It says Lithuania's defense ministry recommended that consumers avoid buying Chinese mobile phones and advised people to throw away the ones they have now, after the government report found the devices had built-in censorship capabilities. Flagship phones sold in Europe by China's smartphone giant Xiaomi, which I've been a huge fan of, which no wonder they're so incredibly cheap.
When something is too good to be true.
It's a little too good to be true here. So
what's Uncle Chris been saying about all these servers and everything else?
So the Xiaomi have a built-in ability to detect and censor terms such as Free Tibet, Long Live Taiwan Independence, or Democracy Movement, Lithuania's state-run cybersecurity body said on Tuesday. The capability in Xiaomi's Mi-10T 5G phone software has been turned off for the European Union region, but can be turned on remotely at any time, the Defense Ministry's National Cybersecurity Center said in the report. Our recommendation is to not buy new Chinese phones and to get rid of those already purchased as fast as reasonably possible, Defense Deputy Minister told reporters, including the report. Xiaomi did not respond to Reuters for a comment. Cheryl, relations between Lithuania and China have soured recently. China demanded last month that Lithuania withdraw its ambassador in Beijing and said it would recall its envoy to Lithuania after Taiwan announced that its mission in Lithuania would be called the Taiwanese Representative Office. Taiwanese missions in Europe and the United States use the name of the city Taipei, avoiding a reference to the island itself, which China claims as its own territory. U.S. President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan spoke with Lithuania's Prime Minister last week and stressed support for her country in the face of pressure from China. The National Cyber Center's report also said the Xiaomi phone was sending encrypted phone usage data to a server in Singapore. Cheryl, security flaw was also found in the P40 5G phone by China's Huawei, but none was found in the phone of another Chinese maker, OnePlus. Huawei's representatives in the Baltics told the BNS Newswire its phones do not send user data externally, which there seems to be evidence to the contrary now, doesn't it? The report said the list of terms which could be censored by Xiaomi's phone systems include the default internet browser, currently include 449 terms in Chinese, and is continuously updated. This is important not only to Lithuania, but all countries which use Xiaomi equipment, the center said in the report. And now we know why Xiaomi's are too good. The prices are too good to be true.
Oh my God, that's such bad marketing.
This is just, for censorship, which is just so low grade. It's espionage that we would care a lot more about, and I think Star Micro is the relevant comparison. And there's probably buried much deeper, and not just on Chinese branded phones, but potentially any phones that are manufactured in China.
Okay. Next one is how Reddit's business model change, hiring of COO Jen Wong and UX tweaks after raising $200 million laid the foundation for this year's meme stock mania. And the next one's from the Washington Post, how the Security Exchange Commission boss Gary Gensler says stablecoins are a risk to consumers, like poker chips at the casino, and equates crypto boom to wildcat banking in the 1830s. Well, this doesn't sound good.
Tyler, I've been making that point for a while now, that about the comparison to a poker chip, that basically the best stable coin, the only real good stable coin, is a casino chip, because the casino, by regulation, has the cash in the cage to back up every chip in circulation, which is a lot different than the stable coins that are out in the market.
Yeah. Next one, CNBC says they have sources ahead of its New York Stock Exchange debut. Toast prices its IPO at $40 per share. Okay. And Facebook announces the Portal Go, a $199 10-inch portable device, and a new $349 Portal Plus device with a 14-inch tilting display and stereo speakers, shipping October 19th. Facebook's Portal devices have proven surprisingly popular over the past year, largely due to the pandemic and our dependence on video calls. So, Michelle, is this largely a video call device, essentially, like, is sort of the marketed main use case is doing, I guess, Facebook Messenger calls with video as a standalone device?
I missed the question.
The Facebook Portal Go launching today for $199 for a 10-inch or $349 Portal Plus for a 14-inch tilting display, stereo speakers. It seems like it's the main use case is doing kind of face calls.
Yeah, it's kind of the same use case as Portal, except it will be smaller and obviously won't support the static Portal use case, but you can think about it as the same as Portal, but on the go.
Okay, so the next one's from the Wall Street Journal. Google says it will buy St. John's Terminal, a 1.3 million square foot office building it is leasing on Manhattan's west side for $2.1 billion early next year. Turkey-based Intenseye, which uses computer vision and AI to monitor workplaces and staff for safety violations, raises $25 million. Pager, a virtual healthcare platform for helping patients, raises $70 million. And what else here? Other good ones. This was a big one when we met 12 hours ago. Or 14 hours ago, from the Wall Street Journal, says they have sources that Apple's working with UCLA and Biogen to identify depression, cognitive decline, and other issues using sensor data, such as typing behavior and sleep. They're going big into health based on what they do well, which is hardware, which is sensors, which is data, to be able to detect depression from the way you type on your keyboard. Do you think they have do you think traditional healthcare will be able to compete with algorithms in detecting depression? No, they don't stand a chance. Just like humans can't beat Shazam in identifying songs. That's how stark the contrast is. Algorithms can do absolute magic when it comes to pattern recognition, like Shazam does with audio, in a way that no human will ever be able to do. And they're going to apply that.
Hey Tyler, to add to that, it's
yes.
both they're typing. It's both what it's likely it's like they're typing cadence or something. Who knows like what their data sets are? But it's also going to be time of day that you type, how you type during those times. I mean, the data like there was another room in Clubhouse today with social engineering, and they were talking about this, like the words that you use, like depending on how deep they go with that data. As you point out, it'll be very, very insightful and way ahead of any other. The use of data will be huge.
Yep. When the Apple through its laptops and phone and watch and earbuds, oh boy, are they going to be able to do everything, and it puts them in the prime position to take over health in a really interesting way. Give them a really unfair advantage in diagnosing pretty much everything. They gave, just to remind people, they themselves gave an example a few months ago in one of their big flagship video live streams, where they said your phone in your pocket can detect your cadence of your walking, and it knows you have, as you walk all day with that device in your pocket, it knows your gait. It knows your gait so well it can identify you from anybody, like a fingerprint. And if your gait changes in a very particular ways, which happen as people age, you start to walk differently as you age, and there's a certain change that happens characteristically. There's a signature change that happens a few months before somebody falls down due to old age, and it can detect that and warn you and say, oh, a few months from now you're going to fall and break your goddamn hip, grandpa. So call your relatives now and let them know in about 3.5 weeks you're going to fall down and break your hip. Do you think the traditional medical industry is going to be able to compete with that? You're a fucking idiot if you think they can. It's black goddamn magic. It's data magic. There should be a whole new name for it so people understand how much of a disadvantage or advantage that Apple has with this data and these sensors. So the next one's from Bloomberg, an overview of the market for NFTs, where most assets sold on OpenSea in the past 90 days have not seen another deal. And their OpenSea's actually strangely might be benefiting from the crazy bad news that one of their key people was using the platform in a kind of insider trading kind of way, and it's brought OpenSea's name and brand back into the news. Let's see what else is here in the little articles before we jump into all
Tyler,
of it.
There's an article that just came out in Reuters about Poland dropping China as well. They were on their genome project.
Mm-hmm.
China's BGI group was that Poland has concerns about data security on its genome map of Poland because China's BGI group was breaching security.
I've got it right here.
Yeah.
From Reuters. Reuters says they have an exclusive that the European Union funded project to build a genomic map of Poland plans to drop gene sequencing technology from China's BGI group over concerns about data security, one of the project's leaders told Reuters. The genomic map of Poland's concerns stem from questions over how Polish genomic data may be used to relate to national security, says a professor at the Institute of Bioorganic Chemistry at the Polish Academy of Sciences, who steers the project. He said the concerns were initially raised by a report here earlier this year from the U.S. National Security Commission on AI, which says that BGI, the Chinese company, may be serving as a global collection mechanism for Chinese government genetic databases. I'm shocked. Absolutely shocked. Holy shit. China's collecting DNA? Making a DNA database? You mean like the New York Times reported a year and a half ago? Did people not believe this? And you guys who join every day know I've said they're doing this. So BGI told Reuters in response that the U.S. report was disinformation not borne out by the facts. Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs has called it groundless accusation and smears. Just like Huawei says they don't send data from their phones.
Did the word categorically false come out yet?
Hey Tyler, why you're on this? I guess I thought somebody else would have sent it to you by now because I thought this was like a really it's got a lot of prominence in the Wall Street Journal, but maybe this is a late publication. But it says Zoom's nearly $15 billion deal for Five9 under U.S. government review over China ties. Justice Department-led Team Telecom is looking into whether Zoom's China ties can make its acquisition of the software company a national security risk. So it's just in the context of everything else that we've been talking about. But it's a big article in the journal. I guess it's going to be tomorrow.
So the spokesperson from Poland says it stood by its report and has recommended the United States and allies double down on techniques to better protect patient privacy. Since 2015, Beijing has restricted foreign researchers from accessing gene data on Chinese people. Oh, that's interesting. So China's restricting foreign researchers from having any access to any kind of genetic data on Chinese people, but China wants to help countries do all the genetic sequencing of their people. And of course, China's not using that data. There's no, I mean, who's this guy? Who's this academic from this quote unquote university? Some researcher who's saying China's trying to build genetic databases of everybody.
So Tyler, Kara Swisher's later, like you brought her up this morning. I think it's today's podcast is the interview with the CEO of 23andMe, and she's pretty unequivocal about China and other places being way ahead of us on the genetic research area, and we need to get up to speed. As in we, the U.S., but just saying like what's going on and where the nations are and how they're using it.
So check this out. You got to love this paragraph. In August last month, a human genetics committee at the Polish Academy of Sciences said a lack of compliance by what it called Far East companies with the principles of genetic testing ethics raised serious doubts. It did not name any companies or countries, but urged labs and scientific institutions that sequence genetic material abroad to stop using biotechnology companies from the Far East. It said about 100,000 complete Polish genomes may already be in Far Eastern laboratories, quote unquote, Far Eastern laboratories. So, is this the Philippines? Who are they talking about? Far Eastern laboratories, citing a rough estimate which Reuters could not verify. Poland has no control over the sensitive personal data, the committee said.
That's a little bit ambiguous about whether they're exporting the data or actually taking samples. If they're saying it's in laboratories as opposed to, being analyzed.
And they're halfway through. It says the boss said the genomic map of Poland, which is expected to cost $25 million and is about halfway through its program of sequencing 5,000 Polish genomes, has outsourced the work to a third party since 2019. That company, Central Europe Genomics Center, started using BGI's technology last year. Now, the boss says that the genomic map of Poland has decided not to send any genetic data out of the country and is likely to cancel the contract it has with that group who's using the Chinese company to do it. He added that the final decision, still to be approved by the funding institutions, is expected within the next week or two as the technology to sequence genetic data has advanced to become cheaper. They say the mapping project plans to bring the remaining sequencing in-house. The project wants to ensure Poland has genetic independence so it can ensure data security. And CEGC did not respond to requests for comment, Cheryl. The biotech
54.
company, the European Union, which provides about 65% of the total funding for the genomic map, did not respond to requests for comment, Cheryl. Neither did Poland's Ministry of Education and National Information Processing Institution, Cheryl, also involved with funding the project. Poland Special Services declined to comment.
57.
Okay. BGI, here's a national security. It says, Reuters reported here in July that BGI had developed and improved a prenatal screening test sold to at least 52 countries in collaboration with the People's Liberal... Oh my fucking dear God. So, Reuters is reminding people in the closing of this article, it says, Reuters reported here, and it's a link with the word here, in July, 2 months ago, that BGI, this company that this article is about, that's Poland is now accusing of, harnessing Polish genetic data, that BGI developed a prenatal screening test for mothers sold in 52 countries in collaboration with the People's Liberation Army hospitals. The privacy policy on the test's website says data collected can be shared when it is directly relevant to national security or national defense security in China. Although BGI says it hasn't been asked to do that. BGI uses the pregnant women's genetic data for research into the traits of populations. It also collaborates with the People's Liberation Army in other areas of research. BGI rejects any suggestion that it developed the test branded Nifty in collaboration with the military and says working with military hospitals is not equivalent. BGI takes all aspects of data protection, privacy, and ethics extremely seriously, the company said in a statement on Polish decision, adding it complies with all applicable data protection laws and regulations. We value the business and research relationship we have with all our partners and customers in Poland, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration with them. Yeah, good luck with that. So they're selling genetic tests to 52 countries for mothers. And in a collaboration with the People's Liberation Army hospitals. Okay. I'm sure there's nothing there. Thank you for that one. And the next one up is, where did it go?
So hang on one second, Tyler.
Yeah.
On that, do you find it curious that they're monitoring mothers? I mean, considering they're trying to increase the birth rate, like, do you think they're, looking for genetically Han Chinese people and like trying to select them out? I don't know.
We don't know. What I've heard, little birdie told me that not just China, in fact, even possibly America and other countries. And by the way, I recall it was the UAE or somebody in that region also publicly said They want to build a genetic databases of all visitors to their countries. By the way, we have the Olympics coming to Beijing in February.
That's Israel, right?
I don't think it was Israel, but Israel would no doubt have the technology. I mean, Israel's a pioneer. It's like
Israel is doing it. Japan is doing it, and Singapore have a biggest database for, I think, diverse Asian genome data too. I just DM you.
So might we see the gold medal winners of the Beijing Olympics cloned and replicated to join the Beijing team 20 years from now?
Tyler, I jumped in a little late here, but there's another article on Reuters that Facebook wrapped up a deal with Australian media firms.
Okay, what's that?
Facebook has told Australian publishers it has stopped negotiating licensing deals. I'm just reading the article now, but with Facebook and the Wall Street Journal articles coming out one after the other, I just thought it was interesting with the Rupert Murdoch ties.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, I'm sure that it will get more traction here. Then other big headlines here. Report finds global internet freedom has declined for the 11th consecutive year, including in the U.S. Tech giants clashed with governments over data and more. And Slack announces Clips, short video voicemail messages for channels rolling out today for paid accounts. And the BitClout creator raises $200 million for a decentralized social called DeSo, a blockchain project with social tools like profiles. And now we get into the really interesting headlines that people are tweeting in, like this one from CNBC a few hours ago, that Revolut, one of the biggest neobanks, kind of a banking app for kids who, and they're growing huge, one of the biggest neobank apps, and they're now starting to add other interesting features. So Revolut, the $33 billion fintech player, is rolling out commission-free stock trading in the U.S. Oh boy. Now there's a very popular fintech app, neobank app, competing with Robinhood for commission-free stock trading. And the question is, how will they monetize that? Because, well, let's read a little bit of the article, but this is more interesting than meets the eye. I'll explain why in a second. The Revolut is set to announce Tuesday that it secured U.S. broker-dealer license, enabling it to compete with the likes of Robinhood and Square in the red-hot world of retail trading, according to CEO Nick, who, by the way, spoke at my event 3 years ago. The service will be available in a few months and will eventually allow for fractional share purchases and investing spare change from card transactions like peers including Robinhood. Revolut will earn payment for order flow revenue. So they are using the same model.
That was what I was going to ask.
Yeah, that's the important detail.
So if they knock down payment for order flow, this company is just dead in the water.
No, I mean they'll just remove that feature, because to Revolut this is just a feature.
You're right. Yeah.
So, but to Robinhood, that's their main bread and butter. So, yeah, that's what's going to be interesting to see. What I was thinking was maybe Revolut found another way to do it without doing order flow, payment for order flow, so that if it does, because the SEC does shoot it down, Robinhood will be screwed and Revolut will not, and Revolut will take over all of Robinhood's business. All of those users of Robinhood will jump over to Revolut. That would be genius if they can figure out a way to do commission-free trading without payment for order flow by using the data in other ways, because they might be able to monetize them through an ad network or something, Ken?
Yeah, I was about to say, there's other companies like Schwab and Fidelity that also don't charge commission, so this zero commission is not that unique. My understanding, though, with Fidelity is that because they have so much mutual fund product, they don't use payment for order flow because they've got so many, they can trade with it themselves. It's their own order flow because it's like,
They
because
have stock,
they have so
like
many
inventory.
Who said that?
Chris, it's like having inventory. It's like shopping between stores, because that's how you kind of look at shorting is you buy it at Target and you return it at Walmart and pocket the difference, right?
Yeah, something like that. But they don't do payment for order flow. But this zero commission thing is not unique to Robinhood. That's the
Right.
only point I want to make. Yeah.
Yes. And anyway, it'll be interesting to see Revolut's
Or commission free. I mean, there's plenty of places you can get
commission free. Yeah. So yeah, but that's what I'm saying is if they can figure out how to do the commission free without the order flow, then if order flow becomes shot down by the SEC as they're implying they might do, Robinhood's going to be hurting, and those users might flee to something like Revolut, and that would be a huge boom for Revolut if that happened. So the next one is from CNBC. Jeff Bezos says traveling to space changed how he thinks about nature. Following this year's focus on conservation, the Bezos Earth Fund said it will support landscape restoration and food system transportation in coming years. Speaking of fintechs from CNBC.
I have to wonder if that's the overview placebo effect.
Yeah. Hold on. And for five, Ken, let's read this again. Zoom's nearly $15 billion deal for Five9. The one that you read here? I got it right here.
I sent it to you, yeah.
Yeah. The Justice Department-led panel is investigating Zoom and their deal to buy American customer service software company, citing potential national security risks posed by U.S. video conferencing giants China ties. Because Zoom founder is Chinese, they used to route the data through China. And so the Department of Justice, or the Justice Department, said the interagency committee known as Team Telecom needed to review a license application that arose from the San Jose based company nearly $15 billion deal to buy Five9 to see if it poses a risk to the national security or law enforcement interests of the U.S., according to a letter posted on the Federal Communication website. The department said there could be a risk from the foreign relationships and ownership associated with Zoom. In the letter dated last month, the Justice Department requested the FCC defer action on the application until Team Telecom finishes its review, putting Zoom's deal on hold. The Five9 acquisition is subject to certain telecom regulatory approvals, said a Zoom spokesperson. We have made filings with the various applicable regulatory agencies, and these approval processes are proceeding as expected. And the U.S. government has been ramping up its security of Zoom's China ties. The Justice Department last year charged one of its China-based executives with conspiring to disrupt video conference commemorations of the Tiananmen Square democracy protests. Zoom is also facing multiple ongoing federal investigations related to its dealings with Beijing. Experts in telecoms security said any such negotiations with Team Telecom, which reviews foreign investment in FCC-regulated entities, could put Zoom into the crosshairs of officials in the U.S. as well as China, where the significant crackdown on the tech industry is already underway. Zoom became, that's an interesting bit there. Hold on here. The Tiananmen Square protests. What was that? The Justice Department last year charged one of Zoom's executives in China with conspiring to disrupt video conference commemorations of the Tiananmen Square democracy protests. Oh, that gave them away. Oh, shit. Oh, that's wild. So Zoom is doing its best to downplay its Chinese connections and not censoring any content in any Zoom calls, except they just really couldn't help themselves when it came to people using Zoom to do video calls about the Tiananmen Square commemorate, like the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, where people were doing Zoom call gatherings to commemorate the Tiananmen Square massacre, and that was just a bridge too far for Zoom to sit on its hands and let people do those calls.
It's like Zoom was hiding in the closet, and then they just jump out. It's like, God damn it, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like, yeah, no, we're not. There's no Chinese, nothing going on here. No, never mind. There's no Chinese, nothing. No. Oh, okay. Join us for our Tiananmen Square commemoration call going on tomorrow, and then the executives conspired to disrupt the video conference commemorations of Tiananmen Square. Why would you have a problem with that, Zoom? Why would you be conspiring to disrupt Zoom calls about Tiananmen Square? Zoom, what's the problem there if you have no Chinese connections? Quite interesting. Okay, so that's why they got to look and do a little investigation about your acquisition here for national security reasons. Because
Does anybody know, by the way, then you brought it up, what does the U.S. government use for these types of calls now? Are they using Zoom, Microsoft Teams,
WebEx?
Cisco? WebEx, Cisco. Okay.
Yeah, we use WebEx and NIH.
And by the way, somebody could find this. Did not even when that Zoom China connection was discovered, when Zoom was starting to boom at the beginning of COVID, did not Elon Musk say no more Zoom for Tesla? Can somebody find that article? I'm almost certain that happened.
I mean, I spoke to his people about it at the time.
And that could be that might have because I believe he tweeted about it, and that could have been the turning point for Tesla in China.
Well, I mean, the issue is like we're not allowed to use Zoom if you do like federal contracting work. I mean, there's some exceptions here and there, but it's a real problem. And it's not Eric Yuan. Like I think he failed like 5 times to come to the United States. And there's this sort of like Silicon Valley bullshit story about that.
I found it.
That he's like,
Reuters.
That somehow that Silicon Valley was like racist about it. But there are a lot of people who believe that like when he was working at Cisco, he was a Chinese spy. And I don't say that like that's not just something I throw around. Like that, and if you look at the history of Zoom and you look at like how many the project managers and how many direct reports they have under them. I mean, a friend of mine was telling me recently it's like 120 engineers for every one product manager. I mean, it's kind of crazy. So I don't know. I mean, I think we're going to learn a lot of interesting stuff there, and it's going to continue to be, very, very damning. We don't really like know how to deal with China insofar as like they're constantly gathering data on us. Like it's the stated policy of their government. I mean, they write this shit down. You can go read it, and it's in English. I mean, my goodness. So I don't think we really understand. We in the West are sort of like hung up on like privacy debates or like should Facebook have my data? Should WhatsApp? We get into all these like very like minute debates. But in China, the attitude is like all the data of everybody in the world belongs to the Chinese state. And that's pretty like radical idea, and they're doing it. Like it's not like some kind of like crazy whatever. And I don't know, he who wins in the world tends to be those, in the marketplace, he who has the most data. And I think that may well be true in the case of China too. I mean, it's frightening to think about it. You see with this AUKUS deal, there's all kinds of data sharing agreements between the governments. And so maybe, the rest of us will team together to defeat China on this, but I don't know. Doesn't look good.
Okay, so the next one, I found the article from Reuters. Elon Musk's rocket company SpaceX has banned its employees from using Zoom, citing significant privacy and security concerns. Let's crack this open, and I recall it being this happened at the exact same week that, let's see, what's the date on this? April 2nd, 2020. I told you right in the beginning of COVID, when it was revealed that Zoom had connections to China, and so SpaceX. I recall this article coming out, so that's why I mentioned that. So,
And of course, the Chinese troll farms were pushing across the world for lockdown. And of course, everybody being locked down would have communicated on what? Zoom, right? So obviously, there was a concerted strategy there to make their facial recognition products better.
okay, so the next article up here is from Poppy that fintech firm Wise, previously known as TransferWise, launches feature that lets users spend money invested in the stock market. The move comes after a surge of retail investors participating in the stock. Hold on here. Wise, fintech firm Wise launches feature that lets users spend money invested in stocks. That's a weirdly worded headline. Wise debuted an investments feature Tuesday that lets users invest in stocks through multiple currencies and spend their holdings. The new feature, called Assets, allows customers to invest in BlackRock's iShares World Equity Index Fund, which tracks a basket of a whole bunch of public companies. Users will also be able to instantly spend up to 97% of the invested money in their accounts with a Wise debit card or send funds overseas. The idea is that customers can hold their funds in stocks, but also still spend and send the money in real time. Holding money in various currencies can be hard to manage efficiently, and Assets is seeking to solve that problem by providing an opportunity for customers to earn a return on their money with us in a host of different currencies all in one place. Wise says it is holding back 3% of users' invested cash as a buffer in case of any large market fluctuations to prevent customers' balances from dipping into negative territory.
That would seem to violate margin rules. So I hope you tweet that article because I want to look at that.
Here it
Because
goes.
you cannot have 97% leverage. Okay, even if you have just U.S. Treasuries, they're like 90% margin. You could margin those to like 90%, but not 97. And stocks are basically 50%. And margin requirements are set by the Federal Reserve. So I have no idea how they're doing that.
I totally agree with you, Ken. I was just going to say that.
Tyler, you're going to tweet that out, right?
I
Because
just
I
tweeted
want
it.
to. Okay.
By the way, same time, that nearly same day that same week that Elon banned Zoom, Taiwan banned Zoom. Zoom banned by Taiwanese government over China security fears is the headline from the BBC. So, and Taiwan seems to know a thing or two about this. Next one up from I forget who sent this in, but it's from Bloomberg. Is there room for e-scooters in New York City? The largest mobility market in the U.S. is finally getting its first fleet of shared electric scooters. Just don't expect to see them in Manhattan. Announced by the micromobility company Lime in November 2020, the new Gen 4 models boast beefier handlebars and wheels and front suspension and a swappable battery and all over sturdier presence with a tiny two-wheelers most e-scooter riders are likely to be familiar with. We sort of figure that if you can build a scooter for New York City, you can replicate it anywhere, says Lime. And after years of sitting on the sidelines of e-scooters' descent on scores of other U.S. cities, New York City is finally getting in on the action, launching its first ever shared e-scooter pilot program last month. The highly competitive request for proposals from the city's Department of Transportation led to invitations to 3 micromobility companies, Lime, Bird, and Vio. So it looks like they're going to be testing Lime scooters in Manhattan. Or no, not in Manhattan. Huh? It's hard to
So,
tell.
what's the law with e-scooters in the States? Because in the UK, scooters are illegal on the roads for normal users, but they have got a lot of these companies emerging doing the scooter sharing, and it's actually legal to get on these company scooters, but it's illegal to have your personal one. So it does make sense. So what's the law in the States with that one?
I don't know. Does someone on stage
Well,
know
I can tell you these scooters in the United States, and certainly, by the way, Tyler, particularly in Santa Monica,
Yeah.
they're like all over the place, and people just leave them all over the place, and they're a public hazard.
Yes, because one of the three big companies, which is Bird, is based in Santa Monica, which is they're kind of credited as popularizing and pioneering the whole space.
I was there this weekend. I'll share footage. I kind of sent some footage trying to lure you back over here at some point. But I was over at Montana Avenue Park with the kids, and those birds are neatly put away, and they're not a nuisance in my opinion. I was actually kind of willing to try one, but I just didn't have time.
That might
Hey,
be
DJ Teflon.
that might.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Mr. Cal Patel
Sorry
jumping
about
in.
that. Sorry
Hot on the mic.
I wouldn't.
What are
Not
you, a
gonna
newbie
interrupt
here,
you, man.
Cal? You know how the mic works?
No. Go ahead, my friend. Go ahead. Sorry.
Any good headlines you've seen lately, Cal?
No, I was gonna ask. Can I just ask DJ a question there?
Sure.
DJ Teflon. Just in the UK, are the private ones uh, illegal, but the Voi's are everywhere. Man, Voi's big in Bristol. They're everywhere, right?
That's from Stockholm, yeah.
Yeah.
So Swedes again.
Big, and they're coming to Oxford too.
So in the UK, it hasn't fully gone live yet. I think there's one or two companies that are actually about to go live, providing legal scooters for people to use. But I just find it a bit strange how it's okay to hire one and to use on public roads, but you can't use your own personal one.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that delineation because all I see is the scooters, and I don't know whether the Voi's are everywhere, right? In some cities, Bristol, etc. And there's this regulation of electric vehicles and cars. It's got to be very localized as well because just as a thing that I learned a little bit about is there's a little Oxford company. I have a small investment called Oxwash, which is they basically collect washing and you take it. These electric bikes. They have massive things in the front, right? You probably have a lot of them in Sweden and stuff, but it's and they're taking off quite a lot, right? So Pedal and Post is another one. Oxwash is that they have these they collect the laundry, put it in there, and they're electric, right? And I don't know what the regulation on these vehicles are because there's a lot more of them are coming on, right? And so now based on what these guys, the startup guys, I mean, these guys were talking about, it was they're getting city councils bugging them about it, right? So asking them and kind of they haven't regulated yet, but they're asking them like, hey, these things are, you got quite a lot of these things. We're getting complaints from motorists because you're kind of too large. You're not as thin as a bike, but you're bigger. So I think this becomes all these local cities are going to have to figure out the road structures. They've been working on bikes, but these things have different dynamics. And then when you have autonomous, and how do these all interact with each other? That's going to be fun. Anyway, sorry, Tyler.
What about the cycle lanes? Won't that accommodate these vehicles?
Yeah, maybe that's a use for the cycle lanes because in London nobody's using the cycle lanes. Well, at least not as
I
many
think that
people.
when you go to the central part of London, it is highly used. They
Oh
do
yeah,
use
yeah,
it a
you're
lot.
right.
Yeah,
You're right.
but maybe not on the outside. Like maybe
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
yeah.
Next up,
You were
Highly
asking him.
used, highly used, and highly dangerous. I mean, you watch those guys on the cycle lanes going in at rush hour, like they are seriously brave or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah, true. I agree with you on that one.
That's the same here.
Dave's the London taxi driver. That's what he does, or he's an Uber driver. It's like this is
Oh,
what they
don't
all
even talk
complain
about
about.
Uber drivers. They're the
They all
worst.
complain about it.
hey, quickly, Tyler, the other one I wanted to mention because we as a team have been talking about this for a little while. You know the whole Facebook thing where there was an allegation or a kind of assertion that Facebook was a little bit right leaning, and we talked about how like Ben Shapiro was coming up lots. And anyway, the so what is our friend Charles has written a really cool Substack piece around the Chinese influence and the relationship between Mark and Ben Shapiro, I would commend it to the audience for for good reading. Anyway.
Okay, is Charles still on stage? Here he is.
Yeah, I'm
What's
here. I'm here. Sorry,
give us a
I had
little
to.
summary here.
Yeah, I mean, the short version is if you have whitelisting, right, which we now know, officially the Wall Street Journal reported that that's what goes on, then you can actually build a very successful business off of that kind of operation, right? So if you're not going to be subject to the same regulations as other people on Facebook, you can build a kind of a very good business. And so the piece I wrote, it's called what is it called? It's called Ben Shapiro,
Made in China.
Made in China, promoted by Zuck. Why Mark Zuckerberg white labels the Daily Wire, and it goes into the relationship between Mark Zuckerberg, Jared Kushner, Ben Shapiro, and how I know about this is obviously through talking to Thiel and obviously connections with the Trump world. And in particular, it talks about how Zuckerberg kind of wants that phrase of state sanctioned conservatism, how he wants something like the Daily Wire that exists, which is basically like the House conservative position. And the Wilkes brothers, they are one of the largest fracking fortunes in the United States, and their business was purchased by the Chinese, as part of a larger investment group. And we've seen the way in which sort of like China, has influence campaigns in the U.S. By basically, sort of like hiding money that's in investments and real estate, in and all sorts of other sort of projects in tech, obviously. And so it kind of goes into that history. And I, sort of, I was complaining about this for a while, and I sort of talked to some journalists about it, some of which are kind of covering it, but they're only covering parts of it. And I figured, what the hell? Why don't I just take a whirl and throw it up there on my Substack? So happy to answer questions about it if people are interested. But yeah, I'm increasingly of the view that talking to journalists, while helpful in some ways, because sometimes, I used to complain and never talk to them, and they end up writing the story they want to write anyway. So basically, you're kind of like, it's like a form of like legalized extortion. Like you sort of have to participate, so it's like a journalism tax or something. And so increasingly people have asked me about things that have gone on, and I've just kind of put it out on Substack and been like, all right, this is what I think of on this topic, and that way I could just direct people to it as just a form of like dealing with it. And it's a great cure for insomnia too, for those who are kind of obsessive about writing.
Okay. So the next one, Dave, did you tweet that out, or Charles, did you tweet it out?
I
Yeah,
don't.
I'll tweet it out.
Okay.
You do as well, Charles, and then the team will see it.
Okay. So the next one up is from, speaking of Elon Musk, SpaceX and Tesla CEO Elon Musk mocked President Joe Biden on Sunday for neglecting to praise his aerospace company's historic all-civilian mission to space. SpaceX and mission to orbit, rather. Musk recently said he would prefer to stay out of politics, but Sunday's quip, which alluded to a Trump taunt about Biden, belied his frustration with the White House. And what happened was somebody on Twitter named Electric Cyber Farmer tweeted that the President of the United States has refused to even acknowledge the 4 newest American astronauts who helped raise hundreds of millions of dollars for St. Jude. What's your theory on this? That was just a tweet sent by somebody named Electronic Cyber Farmer. Elon Musk replied to the tweet saying he's still sleeping, referring to Joe Biden. Why he's not responded is that he's asleep. And that, as usual, as all Elon tweets, went viral. So that's his little poke at Joe Biden.
I wonder if he'll be singing that same tune when the SEC comes at him again. Oh, I wonder.
Some Bill Nelson, Senator Bill Nelson, did congratulate Inspiration 4 with today's splashdown. You've helped demonstrate that low Earth orbit is open to business.
Bill Nelson's no longer a senator. He hasn't been a senator for a long time.
His Twitter account
He
is.
was a senator. He's NASA administrator now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what he is. Yep.
Yeah, but what's the definition of an astronaut? Is it just someone who makes it out of orbit or makes it into orbit? Or, I mean, is there a scientific component to that? I mean, because I
What a
think,
great question. Yeah, I agree. Like, it seems kind of bullshit that you can just like kind of like go up there for a little bit and you're an astronaut. I mean, it's kind of offensive
yeah,
to all these people who work their asses off to be astronauts. I
Well,
agree.
didn't they just say that Bezos was not an astronaut? They made a big deal about Bezos not being an astronaut for some reason.
I don't know. I mean, it does. The whole thing is kind of strange. It's also weird to me that it's like, why do we decide on the convention of astronaut? Like, for the Russians, isn't it like cosmonaut? Like, I don't know. These definitions are kind of weird to me. I don't think just because you're in a plane, you become a pilot, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I think it's just
So th-
confusing.
there was a discussion of this in Small Steps, Giant Leaps, and actually, astronaut and cosmonaut carry diplomatic status, and the reason for this is the possibility of landing in other countries. And also the fact that many of these people historically had sensitive knowledge, and the idea was to protect them through diplomatic protections. I don't know whether that really applies to these particular four, but it would be nice if we could have a rule that you had to have diplomatic status, because then that would mean that nobody would be allowed to engage in hostilities.
Yeah, because it gets very strange when you start having people fly up to space for military reasons, just for tourist reasons. Is it your full-time job to be an astronaut? Is it part-time? What is your role? Yeah, like I think we have to distinguish between a passenger who's just going up for a joyride, even if it's like a day or less, whatever, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, like Bezos and others did, or it's your full-time job which carries responsibilities, and you hold certain info and you train for it all the time. Like I guess all the passengers have to train for some reason, but I just don't know how much you have to train as a passenger to be called an astronaut.
I think it's cultural appropriation. I don't think you should be able to. I think you should have to like do a spacewalk. Maybe like
That's
watch the
funny.
right stuff. Like
Cultural appropriation.
that's how I think it should be.
Space culture. Yeah, so it's offensive to people in space if you walk around as an
I mean,
astronaut.
when Jeff Bezos dies, they're not going to say astronaut Jeff Bezos, right? They're going to say like world's richest dude, inventor of Amazon, possible CIA informant. Like that's how they're going to do. That's how they're going to do Bezos. They're not going to call him an astronaut.
Possible CIA. Oh, I miss this room. That's
Cal,
that's
you've
that's
missed
just
all the
funny.
fun of
No,
Charles.
that's funny. That's just funny. Anyway, only
Okay.
you would only understand that if there's like you'd understand Charles, right? Over the months. So
So
anyway,
the next one up is, let me retweet out that Elon Musk one from Antonio in the audience via Bloomberg. Russia's internet regulator is poised to significantly raise the fines it has slapped on U.S. technology companies such as Facebook and Google as the Kremlin escalates its push to curb access to information online. And companies that refuse to delete content judged to be illegal in Russia which is basically anything that hurts the feelings of dear leader, could soon face fines of 5 to 20% of their annual local revenue. The Federal Communications Watchdog said in an email that definitely is a notable increase in the fines. 20% of your annual Russian revenue belongs to Mr. Putin if you say something he doesn't like. For a number of companies that have systemically refused to comply with the agency's legal demands, the issue of fines on revenue is being considered in the near future. It will also consider other means of enforcement. Russia has ratcheted up pressure on foreign technology companies amid a broader crackdown on anti-Kremlin opposition this year. Last week, Apple and Google bowed to pressure to remove an app called Smart Voting designed to help protesters vote out ruling party politicians after authorities accused them of meddling in parliamentary elections. The government has moved aggressively to curb access to information since the arrest of opposition leader Alexei Navalny in January, following his return to Russia. Many independent media outlets have been tagged foreign agents and forced to close or conform to onerous reporting requirements. While the election has served as a catalyst for recent crackdowns, the government's recent measures are a continuation of a years-long effort to restrict the online access to information in Russia. A series of laws and regulations introduced in recent years expanded Russia's authorities' ability to filter internet content automatically. According to Human Rights Watch, the government required internet service providers, that's the pipes, the telecoms, to install equipment that can block websites, and it has also sought to restrict citizens' access to virtual private networks, VPNs, tools that are used to circumvent censorship and protect anonymity online. In March, Putin said in a speech that society will collapse from the inside unless the internet obeyed not just the laws of formal legal rules, but also the moral laws of society in which we live. Meanwhile, Russian courts have this year repeatedly used fines to foreign companies, tech companies, for not removing content. Facebook has been charged $900,000 so far this year. Twitter has been fined about half that, and Google has been fined a little less than that. And Russia demands to remove content from Google websites have rapidly increased in recent years. According to Google transparency reports in 2015, the company received requests to remove fewer than 5,000 items. But by 2020, the number had spiked to 340,000. So that's why they're having trouble keeping up with Putin's requests. 340,000 pieces of content they want removed. At that point, you might be better off building your own Chinese version of the internet, where you whitelist the things that you do approve to be in your internet and stop trying to remove things from the Western internet. Because that's a whole lot of endless whack-a-mole, which we're trying to figure it out eventually. So I think Russia's going to have to do the same. Okay, next up is, let me retweet out that one, and thank you to Antonio for that one. The next one is also from Antonio, this time from Forbes. A company called Aurora has begun receiving modified Toyota Sienna minivans for a pilot program that will lay the groundwork for a commercial robotaxi service it wants to launch in the US with Toyota and Uber by 2024. And Craig Nilsson in the audience sends in this one from Business Insider that the Dallas Fed president, Robert Kaplan, made $1 million stock trades in Tesla, Amazon, and Facebook last year. And why is that interesting? Well, maybe because Tesla is based in Texas, and maybe he traded on a little insider information about knowing they were going to approve Tesla in Texas. So it says Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan made multi-million-dollar stock trades in popular stocks last year. Kaplan bought more than $1 million worth of Google and Oracle, while he bought and sold shares in Tesla and Amazon. Kaplan has been a consistently hawkish member of the Federal Reserve, who has voiced concerns about raising inflation. The disclosure details multi-million-dollar buys. Kaplan was more active in trading stocks than his Fed president peers, making a number of buys. Kaplan reported holding 27 individual stocks. A spokesman for the Dallas Fed said Mr. Kaplan's trading was reviewed and approved by the bank's general counsel, according to the Wall Street Journal. There is precedent for Fed presidents to be active participants in trading the stock market. Kaplan has been president, so there doesn't seem to be any strong claims of any misactivities. Anyway, the next one is from Nalormi, sends in this one from Wired, that AIs can write codes like humans, with including the bugs. New tools to help developers write software also generate similar mistakes. Also from Nalormi, an update that Balenciaga, the fashion brand, and Fortnite, the very popular game environment where people can build their own environment, are a match made in the metaverse. The collaboration spans virtual and physical clothes, as well as a marketing campaign that will appear on billboards in cities like New York and Tokyo. And there's an interesting article going around titled, "My Boss at Instacart Was an Algorithm That Forced Us to Start Working at 5:30 a.m." And it tells the story of a young lady who says that she worked for Instacart and that her boss was the Instacart app. And just like Uber drivers generally, their quote unquote boss, well, let's be clear, they're not employees. They don't have bosses. It's an app. And the app gives you opportunities to do short little gigs that last, a half an hour. So calling this app who sends you options to work is not your boss and it's not a job. That's why they call it the gig economy. And this app that sends you these little notifications that if you want to go do this, you can. That's not your boss. This app called Instacart, that app is just as much your boss as it is mine and anyone else who decides to look at it. That's not your boss. It's an app that sends out opportunities for people to make money. And it's not forcing you to start working at 5:30 a.m., just like it's not forcing me to start working at 5:30 a.m. So it's this whole very unfortunate situation where people feel like they're employed by gig economy apps when they clearly aren't. It's just, we have to stop this ridiculous mind shift that people are forcing themselves into, that they think they have jobs with these gig apps. And the gig apps need to do a better job of reminding everybody of that. I guess that's why they're becoming a victim in this. The next one from RCC, from the Wall Street Journal, that the MBA applications at some of the country's best schools fell this year. The pandemic prompted a surge of interest in the management degree MBAs in 2020 looks to be a passing fad. Let me read that again. MBA applications at some of the country's best schools fell this year. The pandemic prompted surge of interest in MBA degrees in 2020 looks to be a passing fad. Okay. And the next one.
Yeah. So what do you think about that, Todd? If you still, are you there? He may just, okay. Oh yeah, he's there. What do you think?
Is Todd on stage?
Yeah, he's
okay.
Todd always has a good view on where higher education is going on these things. But just curious. Yeah.
I can't hear
him. He's on mic, but he's probably muted. Anyway,
you have a take, Cal?
Yeah, I do. I think there's big structural things going on because I've been looking at it just a little bit. Just from just when you have a kid that's talking about it and thinking about doing it, you look into it, right? So and then also just here with these little pop-ups over the last few months I've been doing around the MBA thing and everything. There's real structural change, and also here where you can get like 80-90% of what you normally get in a good quality MBA school. That includes the networking, the accreditation, the reputation, the job, the salary rise, the all those benefits that they say you have, and the networking in a city or a place. You can get increasingly. There are ways to get all that at 20% of the cost or less, using all kinds of other more creative ways to do that. And so that structurally this MBA is going away, but it probably had a surge, and so that was just a short-term blimp. So that makes sense to me. That's just a comment, but
okay. So next one up is from Poppy, that Kia, the car maker, rolls out robotic guard dogs to patrol their factories. We wouldn't normally write a story about a new security guard starting work at a Kia plant in South Korea, but this one has 4 legs, a thermal camera, laser sensors. It's the Boston Dynamics Spot Robo Dog is now working as a security guard at the Kia factory. And Munich-based company raises.
Do you remember when we had like a 4-hour
Oh
It was
yeah.
a late night Saturday, right?
Uh-huh.
And it was just about the dog. It
Yep.
was like the discussion just went on. It was such an interesting discussion, like
When
this
it was
robo
when
dog.
New York City, yeah,
Yeah,
they had a whole
exactly.
bunch of blowback when the police leased one, and then the citizens of Manhattan weren't having none of that, so they sent that thing back early.
My
So
favorite dog one is the twerking one. You know, whenever the lady's like walking alongside and the robot like mimics the movements, and then it was a nice tie-in with another one of our themes, which is the China "Stop Your Twerking" and "Do What We Tell You."
mhm. So then some Jeff G sends in this one that the next healthcare revolution will have AI at its center. Human life expectancy increase from 31 years, but that's kind of common sense to people who follow this room. And we talked about Apple. The bigger, more impressive example of that is Apple now doing pilot tests with UCLA and Biogen about detecting depression and all kinds of illnesses through the sensors in their devices, including how you type on a keyboard. So, yeah, indeed, AI, the next healthcare revolution will have AI at its center. Make no mistake about that, because it can detect all kinds of things that human doctors cannot. And the people who have the hardware will be in control of that. So, who's got the hardware? Well, it's Google and Apple and whatever other sensors you strap onto yourself, or a Ring, which is why they will likely be acquired by a company who really wants that juicy data, or the Whoop wrist bracelet. I'm trying to think what the other players are. No doubt
The
some.
other one that I was thinking about was Amazon, the Amazon Play that's happening recently as well. So yeah.
So Amazon, I think Amazon's going to have to acquire Aura Ring and get big into this whole sensor game. They're going to need to get bigger into the hardware. They're going to use the Alexa devices in your home to listen to stuff, but they need to get into more hardware. They need to. Well, they are. They're getting into TVs, and those TVs will have cameras on the front, and the camera can look at your face and hear your voice and all that. But they got to get into more of your, because we know Amazon's getting big into healthcare. But if you want to get big into healthcare, you got to have the sensors on people's bodies. So Amazon
I
buying
think
Aura,
that's a good thesis.
that's
Yeah,
got to be
that's a good
happening.
thesis. Yeah,
Amazon's
yeah, that's
got
going to
to
be
be
a good
buying
thesis.
Aura.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get
Man,
that.
do we really want Amazon getting into healthcare and doing what they did
They're already
with
in it.
yeah.
They're already
Yeah.
quite far into it.
They
That's
Seriously.
my
made a
concern.
very good argument for Amazon being able to do it well and better than the US government, so we can see it.
I'm just wondering, are we really willing? I mean, giving pretty much all of our life data, really. I mean, I do get the benefit of detecting all those things, but God knows how much else they could collect, having like a spine thing in your TV and other things. I don't know. I worry how much data that they know about us. It's just there's nothing left private.
I mean, if you
That
think
to me
about
has
Maybe
it,
been
they'll
the
know
most.
as much as. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, they got. I mean, they got. I mean, think about how much is centralized, right? I mean, they make everything and ship it, and then now you got Alexa sitting inside of your room, right, listening to everything you're saying, right? I don't care what they say. That stuff is there, right? And then now we're getting into biometric data too, right? Like, I mean, like look, all you got to do is look at how they behave. Like, do what this organization does with the data and their behaviors, previous recent activity will indicate what they will do with it in the future. It's going to be a monopolization and shutting things out and automation and centralized power and more, and we're all going to turn robots.
They wouldn't tell us what they would do with it until they get caught, right?
they will do anything beyond what they say they would do. It could be for healthcare, but I'm sure they use it for something else. But they will never tell us until they get caught, and then they will apologize and they will move on. I mean, how many
Yeah, but
times have we
you're talking
seen
about
this?
the governments, right? That everything you
No,
just said
no,
there
even the
is what
tech,
governments
even
do.
the tech.
So
I
if I
mean,
give
look
my
at
information to the NHS in the UK, or do I give it to Amazon? I have no clue, right? Because NHS are doing deals with all kinds of data companies, and they're quite desperate to do deals now because they're really hemorrhaging cash, right? And I can't imagine that they're going to have some kind of ethical guardrail that I'm going to have more control over than Amazon. So just to put, I mean, just to have put that perspective on that, Messi, would you not feel? I mean, would the Ethiopian government be more trustworthy for you than Amazon? Just
No,
curious.
no, neither.
Or
I
different
think
countries?
no, not. I think this is why we have antitrust laws, right?
oh,
It's about the centralization of power. I think, right? I mean, the last thing I want is, I mean, I don't like. I mean, we see. You want to see what government does? Just look at China, right? That's what happens when they get all the power. I think we have antitrust laws in the United States for a reason. But what's happened is tech companies have managed to skirt those for a long time because it's all new, under newer stuff, right? But I mean, you that's the risk is in the centralization of all of this power in one spot. That's the risk, right? I mean, I'd much prefer an open economy of having a bunch of entities of the information fragmented, but having it all centralized where like I got Alexa sitting in here listening to everything I say, right? And then I've got all everything I buy, my biometric data, everything under one entity. I don't care if it's a government or somebody else. That's a recipe for tyranny. I'm complete, Maher Dawdi.
So
well,
Jeff,
yeah. Imagine what
Tyler.
happened in
yeah.
2008, right? These financial institutions, they had all the power. They had what, 57% of the American economy. So the government said, well, we can't let them fail because they just control everything. So the data is the exact same thing, like you said. If it's controlled by one or two big tech companies or government, then they just control all of our lives. We have to do what they say we have to do. Otherwise, they will be in charge of all of our life, really. I'm just worried about that.
That's why
Tyler.
I feel like the fintech, not fintech, the super apps won't necessarily work in like America or like the UK because people using something for message and then for finance and all of these other things, it doesn't necessarily seem like they trust one place for that, all of that. Like they definitely separate their usage over a bevy of apps rather than just one central place. Like what Facebook, what's happening with Facebook? Facebook has WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook, right? And people aren't necessarily trying to trust them, and with even Oculus as well, and the Libra, I think it is. I don't know what its new name is, but everyone's trying to break that up right about now. So it doesn't seem very viable, but we'll see if other companies can do it.
Okay, so Jeff G just tweeted out an article about 4 ways to win the future of MedTech wearables. It says soaring demand for wearables has created a market saturated with things, prompting an 18.1% year-over-year growth worldwide. Much of the activity is driven by health tech, and more people watch their wellness from home. Amid COVID, despite the momentum, consumers haven't yet reached the apex of the health wearable adoption curve. Breakout innovations in biometric sensors and miniaturization point to an even bigger boom waiting just around the corner. As things heat up, new and incumbent companies are eager to capitalize on the trends. Industrial design expert says that more than 1,000 medical device projects suggest that there are 4 factors that will likely put manufacturers ahead. For example, thinking beyond the wrist into other categories, even though the wrist is the really obvious one, and that's why Apple is in a great position with their Apple Watch. So, and there's 3 others. So I just tweeted that one out, and thank you to Jeff G for that one.
I
Tyler.
just want to look at how that statement was made up front. It said these companies to win, right? To capitalize. Like the system is set up about, it's all based on But not these things are going to make us better and better human beings and make our lives better. But it's all about this tech. Here's tech domination, right?
Amy is trying to get in. Meher,
Yeah,
one
well,
second. I
actually,
know
it's
she's been.
Meher. I
Yeah.
just wanted to. Meher just said something that's really fascinating because I think he's reading my mind a little bit because I was going to touch on that, which he just talked about. And I think Tyler and Cal, this is a very interesting hypothesis and philosophical discussion as well, but also real, because that key word of capitalizing to win, that sentence is very egotistically driven, where people just want to win regardless of who they're steamrolling over. Now, when you mentioned that about medtech and health tech going up, it's very fascinating because as a yoga teacher, as someone that's been in fitness alongside my entire career, I find it to be very, very fascinating that all these apps people are using. But I also feel there's a psychological, I say this when I teach hot yoga. People have this psychology of grabbing for the water bottle, but they're forgetting that they need to hydrate 4 to 5 hours before, the night before. But they grab for the water bottle like it's like a blanket, like a security blanket. And I feel like a lot of these apps and devices are their security blanket instead of taking responsibility for actually being in action to change their health. And changing their health requires them to engage in physical activity. It requires them to be out there. It requires them to use their body, their physical body. But I feel that there are a lot of people, especially those that work in executive levels, because I've been privy to having conversations with some of them when I was teaching yoga privately in New York. When I would go to those Citibank executives early in the morning to teach them yoga in the 90s, I find it very, very interesting because how is that population going to be saved by these devices? As Mahir was just saying, they need to figure out, they need to take the responsibility in their own hands to start making the changes in their lifestyle that will bring the results that they could see within that device. But just to wear the device as a piece of jewelry, because that's personally what I've seen it worn as. I don't even see people really using it except in my yoga room. I see them using their watches. I see them watching their Aura rings because they want to see what's happening inside the hot room. But I don't see that a lot. But I do see a lot of people with an Apple Watch. So now my question becomes, are they using it for healthcare and medtech, or are they using it to check their emails and answer WhatsApp or look at the devices, the people that are calling them to answer a phone call? I find that to be a habitual change, a lifestyle transformation that has to happen. And that is where I think the capitalization is happening, because they're exploiting the 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 fitness washing. They're exploiting the fitness washing of all these devices, but they're not really a stand to see people get physically well by really giving back to that community or that area. I have a girlfriend who's 30. She's T1D diabetes. You know, her father's an ex-CIO, a chief innovation officer at Philips. He's just kind of left the role. But the main thing is that he was diligently using Philips and his power at Philips to find something for his daughter because he doesn't want to lose his daughter. That's where I start to see, where is the altruism? Where is the fact that people really care about seeing people heal? I'm not hearing this in any of this. I'm just hearing money, greed, capitalism, and not monopoly, but cartel. Because at the end of the day, I don't really, in my MBA study, this doesn't sound like a monopoly to me. It sounds more like a cartel if there's one major company that's gobbling up all these other companies and they're just steamrolling any other competition by gobbling them up. That to me describes what is a bit of a cartel, not a monopoly. So I'm quite curious to see how much further this could go before we shoot ourselves in the foot and then come back complaining later that we didn't do anything about it, or why didn't we know? Because we're being presented with this now, but who is actually being in action? Where are the companies and the startups being in action for health and being in action for not just the apps, but for the people living a healthy lifestyle? And this is what I love about Susie from Scandinavia. Silver economy is real, but the silver economy is not going to be the people that will be using so many devices. Yet we're trying to impose these devices on them indirectly. And I think that's, having a mother who's aging, I find that to be shameless, because there has to be something there that connects the person to the human being and takes away that feeling of isolation and loneliness that is not going to be done by a freaking app. It's not going to be fulfilled by Alexa. It's not going to be fulfilled by their Apple Watch or their Aura Ring. It's just not.
I don't, we read a headline to the contrary about 2 weeks ago about a lady who feels comforted by, it wasn't Alexa, but some other, I think it was an Israeli company. It was making a specific type of voice assistant that was specific to that use case. But, and of course, they're claiming they have good results, as not any startup would. But next headline.
So I just had something to say to Sarah. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm still confused why Walmart, Target, and all the major grocery stores had not been impacted. They can continue to stay open. In startups, we have to deal with all these other different rules and whatnot. And I know this probably been talked about before, but this is just my only thought.
I think they were left open because they're considered critical infrastructure.
But then why would? But this is Tyler. This is really fascinating because what you just said about Israel, the Israeli woman. Of course, everyone could skew marketing data to their benefit because you see this in the crypto space. We'll just leave it at that as a joke. We see it in the crypto. We see it in the crypto space. But to Emilio's point, as someone who is in a storefront startup, specifically now being challenged by losing everything because the government is bailed out once again, KLM, once again the banks, once again the big companies, it makes it very difficult for those that are not even just mom and pops, as Cal has always mentioned as well, but in terms of innovation, but even just gyms and startups, gyms and fitness startups, and it's really sad to say because whatever happened to that being essential and critical to staying alive? I mean,
Okay, I would. Can I just?
Yeah,
I
of
know we've
course.
talked this topic a lot, but Tyler, so please move me on. I don't want to. But I would let me just take a different perspective from you there, Amy. Like, so one, just for 1 second, so one, we had a massive pandemic that hit us, and I know there's massive amounts of conspiracy things we can veer off onto, but I'm just going to talk like a normal person just sitting here, and you needed to go and get your groceries, and the biggest channel, and you had to figure out how to do that. The grocery stores were lazy in terms of how they had digitized in general, and so they got a kick up their ass because they couldn't deliver. And I'm looking at the UK and the US here, so excuse me if I'm not referencing different parts of the world. But so they had to move really, really fast. Some of them have innovated like crazy and created better models and delivery at home, and customers are staying with some of these new propositions that they've created. Target's created an amazing pickup at the stores. The car parks have been transformed. And so they but in the beginning we needed to get food and toilet roll to people. And we can criticize the government in many different ways, but at some level they had to get toilet roll to people, right? And the existing supply chain, yeah, we're going to have different ones in the future, and we're gonna 3D print toilet roll, etc. Got it. But today you need toilet roll, and the grocery stores were supplying that, so they kept them open. They allowed them to be open. They could put restrictions on that so the disease wouldn't spread, and they could control a few outlets better than 1,000 little outlets that they couldn't control the spread. Now you could argue there's no COVID, etc. That's a different discussion. But if you assume some basic things, that they did that. And then secondly, on this point about mom and pop suffering, I'm actually seeing the contrary now. I know they suffered massively and they lost jobs, and people did. And in the UK, they actually gave 80% salary to the employees. Any mom and pop that had a company that was set up, fine, if they were not on the record, then maybe they had some issues getting it, but then there was unemployment benefit. But so they got 80% of their salaries. Now they can't get them back to work. The restaurants are opening, etc., but people won't go back to work because they got used to hanging out at home. And then they also got a different lifestyle, so they want the companies to transform even differently. So there's all that dynamic. But I've seen so many offline operators that got creative at last, and then they moved, and it was tough. But the adversity and the need to innovate drove them to innovation. That's one of the things about innovation, wherever we see it. Why do immigrants get into new countries and I'm going to say this generally, but end up being hungrier to create and innovate and do stuff? They just do. They just, because they have to, So there were some circumstances that were caused here in these different countries where mom and pops are innovating like crazy. Some of these guys, are now on social media platforms selling their beeswax and their locally and the content created, the content creator economy, as we talk about it here a few months ago, and how it's evolving and how you can actually reach a global audience using, content. All these platforms are innovating. All that has come out of that. So where's the cartel? Where's the conspiracy? Where's the Emilio's just alluding to some kind of big conspiracy, etc. But I just think that it's created. The innovators are innovating, and of
So,
course there are some people suffering.
so what do you say about the increase in alcohol use and drug use and just laziness and just people don't want to go back to work? How does that compare to locking down the entire country? I just
Well, no,
don't.
but with that's a consequence of the pandemic. That, I mean, there's a slightly different discussion we can get into in that, but I'm just relating to the point about how we kind of say, oh well, we kept the grocery stores open, but we have no innovation, and we the world has moved on, and I think in a positive way. I just want to put the optimistic part. Now, the discussion that you want to have around lockdown and no lockdown, I think that's another one, and maybe we can have it another time or in a different platform. But just to get on this thing. So what it was in the UK, perhaps, is Tesco in conspiracy with Sainsbury's? These are, and the people who work there, man, these are just like hardworking people. Fine, sometimes they got treated badly by those companies, and they should have been. When I remember the beginning of the pandemic, I went shopping to Sainsbury's. I always like to, and Aldi, by the way. Aldi is my number one favorite store in the whole world. And we shop Aldi 50% of the time. And we went there, and these hardworking employees have jobs, and they're working away. And sometimes they didn't give them, at the beginning, didn't give them the right equipment, etc. Just like the healthcare equipment. And people were right to complain about that and get them the equipment that they needed and the care. But they had jobs. They were happy they could go home. And I mean, there's I mean, where would they have gone, right? To some little storefront where they shouldn't have been in the high street in the first place because their business model was dying, right? I mean, what are we trying to protect sometimes? I don't want to start like Kevin O'Leary, but maybe I sound a little bit like him in Shark Tank there. But
We got
And in terms of this is Aaron, by the way, the wearables and the health tech was able to detect undiagnosed dementia patient, with the greater accuracy and earlier. Same thing with the diabetic population, earlier detection because of the data collection, and 182% increase in diabetes diagnosis with unusual presentation in pediatric population. So earlier diagnosis means disease prevention and a lot of health benefits and reduce health costs down the line.
okay. So we got to get back into the headlines here. On to kick us off, Evan sent in one from CNBC that large employers launch telemedicine program to tackle Black health. Doctor On Demand is partnering with Walmart and large employers on a new program to tackle Black health disparities through telemedicine. And then we've got this one from Cheryl that's SoftBank powered robots to help Grab, which is Southeast Asia's biggest company at this point, tech company. Grab is just booming. Anyway, but Grab kind of does, it's kind of Uber plus Uber Eats plus. They're adding new things all the time. So SoftBank powered robots to help Grab with meal deliveries. Grab's from Singapore, SoftBank's from Japan. So it says Singapore and Japan to use droids jointly developed by China's Kinon, who actually makes the software-powered robots. So a whole bunch of robots coming quickly. because SoftBank has endless amounts of money, Grab has endless amounts of kind of momentum, and China can sure make robots. So very interesting to see robots coming big into Asia. Next one from John Capp in the audience sends in this one from Reuters that the EU plans to legislate for a common phone charger cable. Despite Apple's grumbles of wanting to use the Lightning cable, I think we know what cable they're going to force. It's called USB-C because Apple's using it on their non-iPhone devices. The European Commission will on Thursday present a legislative proposal for a common charger for mobile phones, tablets, and headphones. And you better believe it's going to be USB-C. So I guess they need a little pushing to everyone to solidify around USB-C. Anyone have a hot take for or against USB-C as a default standard connector type and cable for all consumer electronics?
That would
Apple's
be nice. It's just something common, across Android and Apple, and anything else that needs to be charged, any mobile device. Because scrambling for a charging device in your car or anywhere else
Yes, but
becomes,
that's the obvious angle. Yeah, anyone against
Yeah,
USB-C?
well, I'm not against it, but I'm going to explain why mechanically this is a challenge for Apple. Apple considers the Lightning connector their validated port of exit for any media and part of their digital rights management strategy. The Lightning connector is actually a small computer that connects with your phone right at that point. It's not just a power connector. There's a Lightning authentication chip. There's a little microprocessor. It handles all of the media. So this is something easy to implement from a Lightning connector. And so this isn't going to be easy for them to pull off.
Okay, next one.
but they have their iPad Pro using USB-C.
But they probably don't use that as their point of ingress or egress for media in the same fashion, or they've just brought the IAC chip inboard. That's the main thing. We're talking about 25 to 45 cents from a component level, but what it impacts as far as the circuit board, the PCBs, everything, so the dirty trick that Apple pulled is instead of them putting a 50-cent chip to do the iOS authentication on board the device, they placed it on the Lightning connector. So now every connector had to spend 45 to 50 cents of licensing, hardware, etc., just to connect to the iPhone. So I take a step back. It's a 50-cent change for them, but it makes a big impact on their bottom line.
But they certainly have enough space to do that in an iPad. And the question is there enough space to onboard that hardware into the iPhone, which every square millimeter in the iPhone is bottlenecked.
So the iPhone got a little thicker with iPhone 13, or excuse me, 15. It got a little 13. It got a little thicker, and I think they're going to go that route.
They don't. They're not going to have a choice. The EU is going to force them to do it.
Yeah.
So that's the headline. The next one's from their meeting today about that. So we'll have a headline tomorrow on their decision, or whenever they make the announcement. So PayPal launches its super app combining payments, savings, bill pay, crypto, shopping, and more. Here come the super apps to the West as the Asians laugh and say, we had this 5 years ago. Welcome. And Facebook rolls out a news feed change that blocks data watchdogs from gathering data about how Facebook's algorithms work. What an interesting timing for them to do this. And Spotify poised to overtake Apple Podcasts this year. Spotify is still expanding its podcast listening ship in the US, while Apple Podcasts has essentially stagnated, and now Spotify is going to surpass them on podcasts. And remote work, Evan sends in this one, that remote work already changing Seattle permanently, tech workers survey indicates. The majority of Seattle tech workers don't expect to ever return to their offices, ever. That's the result of the data. And the effects on that
I live in Seattle, it's depressing.
Seattle's always
To
been
be honest,
depressing. Yeah.
yeah, it's been depressing, and now it's it multiplied because
Because if
we
you
don't go to the office anymore.
Yeah, and if you don't have to live in Seattle, you're not going to live in Seattle.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you're a tech worker and you're not forced to live there, you're going to get out and move to somewhere with some sunshine and a little more color and optimism. And it's a rather depressing
Yeah,
corner of the U.S. there, Seattle is.
yeah. It's been a year and a half working from home. Is not the best experience.
Yeah.
Just to say that.
So this next headline from Tomoko in Japan actually really helps fill in an important blank or gap that we've been struggling with here for a while. Is why is Toyota, one of the world's leading car manufacturers, if not the world's leading car manufacturer, lagging behind on EV? Like notably, like the Germans like jumped all up into EV, and Toyota's been dabbling with hydrogen and dabbling with like, what's going on here, Toyota? And now we've got a bit of an answer. Toyota CEO says going all EV could cost Japan millions of jobs. Until he's absolutely sure they can, including solid electrolyte battery, probably not say yes to change for all. So they're in achieving carbon neutrality. The enemy is carbon dioxide, not internal combustion. Toyota says the enemy is carbon dioxide, not internal combustion. You know why he's saying that? Because the power inside of the car companies are the combustion engine teams, not the design team, not the marketing team, not the sales team. The combustion engine teams run these car companies, literally, historically. They were built by the engineer who built the engines, built the company. The combustion engine teams run the companies. So they can't bring themselves to make cars without combustion engines. And that's why the Toyota CEO says going all EV will cost millions of jobs, and that the enemy is carbon dioxide, not internal combustion. Because we are combustion engineers. That's what we do. And we can't bring ourselves to make a car without it. But the Germans didn't have a choice because Tesla was going to come eat their lunch. And they knew it. So they had to change, even though they didn't want to.
But Tyler, they were pretty early with the Prius and the hybrids, and
Yes.
they've done quite a bit with
Prius is a
hydrogen,
hybrid,
especially
yes,
in
but
South
those
America.
hybrids have combustion engines. That's the best they can bring themselves to do. They can't bring themselves to make a car without a combustion engine. A hybrid still has a combustion engine.
But they also did the hydrogen, so you consider that a combustion?
It's a combustion hydrogen engine. That's what it is.
Mm.
I
Right, but
think
they are
I
sort
think
of
it's a fuel
acceptable
cell.
as alternatives. They did, yeah. They also have done a fuel cell, yes.
But they're notably lagging. To come on, Toyota. Let's do this.
It's a deep down orthodoxy, right?
That's a pretty
yeah,
hard
deep
stance to
down.
take, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead, Delamere.
Demilare.
Demilare. Sorry about
I don't
that.
know if you can hear me properly.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, it's a pretty hard stance to take.
Yeah. So
wouldn't you say that they would lose out, like being at that stance?
I think they're timing it just right with the market and their appetite for EVs. I think that the Europeans, the people who want European cars want to go electric. The people who want Toyota cars aren't that hard pressed on buying electric yet. So they both know their audiences intimately, and they're buyers. And I think the European, the Mercedes, BMW, those buyers want to go electric, so they're going full electric. And then Toyota buyers they're more price conscious. They're used for a different purpose and a different demographic to an extent. So now, eventually, Toyota's going to shift over to, but it'll happen on its own course. So Dr. Fran sends in this one that Microsoft has done another study on remote work. They seem to be doing a lot of these up there in Seattle. And as we were just talking about, how Seattle geeks are happy to move out if we can do remote working. And then this new Microsoft study says that hybrid work may lead to digital overload based on data Microsoft has collected across hybrid work needs closer management attention, and they're just a little apprehensive to go let people work because they know people in Seattle won't come back.
So I worked at Microsoft for many years as a software developer, and I'm going to tell you, productivity has gone down. This whole working from home is great. I mean, it's fun. You have a different lifestyle, but it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Going into the office.
I want to comment on this a little bit.
Go
This is
real
Shaheen.
quick.
I think,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
real quick. So we experimented with this remote management, and it requires different management. You can't manage the same way as you
Great
did
point,
on
actually.
site.
Great point. That's a very good point. It requires different tools too, different apps.
I think you need much more explicit communication, which is very difficult to do. Much more explicit tracking.
Yes.
Like all sorts of different things, and literally you have to do it for a couple of years before you grok.
Yeah, different communication style as well.
Remember that interesting point that Carl kind of took us down earlier today, in that we feel attacked in our homes now when we get any kind of negative criticism through Zoom or Teams, and what that psychologically, feels like, where you're in your home, this is your domain, your safe space, and then suddenly you're on your heels because your boss is criticizing you or XYZ, right? And
Great point.
That was profound to me, in my opinion. Like that was like part of what's the ongoing learning and discovery here, is that I never even thought about that.
Yeah. So we got to run through these. China keeps virus at bay at high cost ahead of the Olympics, is being reported by Taiwan News from our friend Bibi. So tweeting that out, and it's a great point that China has the Winter Olympic Games coming up in just February, right around the corner. And so they have to do whatever is necessary to keep COVID down in China, and the appearance of any COVID happening in China, because we're hearing about cities being plagued by it. But particularly Beijing, they must keep a green zone as all the athletes come in and everything like that. Next one from Dr. Sarah. There was a tweet put out that from a Twitter account called Neural, and they did a story about DeepMind. And DeepMind is one of the world's top AI teams in the UK, which Google acquired. And it says that DeepMind is telling Google, its owner, it has no idea how to make AI less toxic.
Wow, that yeah, I mean, like, who, how are they going to argue with that, right? Because these guys are smart,
Right? Yeah.
At DeepMind.
So it says in this article, to be fair, neither does any other lab, is the subheadline from the Next Web out of Europe. And I've kind of made that point because the EU is coming up with these big AI regulations, and there's a huge one underfoot. The EU is planning to do it was in fact the UN. It was a UN rights commissioner of some kind last week. We had a huge headline here. We all read it. Remember this, Cheryl? Where she says we need to ban all AIs that are unequitable. We need to have a moratorium on AIs that have any negative impacts on humanity of kind of any kind. It was this massive sweeping statement, which she clearly doesn't know how AI works. And so I think that's what's led this team, who's one of the world's leading teams in AI, to say, yeah, that ain't going to happen, lady.
Wait, but during the DeepMind conference, they were speaking about, the digital hygiene and all of these other things around like efficacy around AI, and they've been speaking about it for years, right? And for them to come out with this is a bit, I don't know, it's a bit of a wild headline, to be honest.
Yeah, so I'm going to tweet this one out. So DeepMind, the creators of AlphaGo and Google's sister company under the Alphabet umbrella, recently conducted a study of state-of-the-art toxicity interventions for NLP agents, neuro-lingual program agents. The results were discouraging. We demonstrate that while basic intervention strategies can effectively optimize previously established automatic metrics, this comes at a cost of reduced language model coverage for both texts about and dialects of marginalized groups. Additionally, we find that human raters often disagree with high automatic toxicity scores after strong toxicity reduction interventions, highlighting further the nuances involved in careful evaluation of LM toxicity. The researchers ran the investigation paradigm through their paces and compared their effects with that of human evaluators. The AI may have a superhuman ability to generate toxic language, but like most bigots, it has no clue what the heck it's talking about. Intervention techniques fail to accurately identify toxic output with the same accuracy as humans. The near future doesn't look bright for NLP. The scary part is that DeepMind, one of the world's most talented AI labs, conducted this study and then forwarded the results to Google's crack problem-solving team called Jigsaw. It's been unsuccessful trying to solve this problem since 2016. Blocking references to minorities as a method to solve toxic language is the NLP equivalent of a sign that says, "For use by straight whites only."
That's hilarious. I can't lie.
Can I relay my gripes here a little bit? I don't even know if this really relates to this article, but bank tellers are no longer needed. Grocery clerks are no longer needed. Before I used to be able to call my local, I don't know, utility company, and I would have a person, but that is just like that's, you have to go through hoops just to talk to a person. So where do people come in with all this? Where do the people actually, like people? Where do they get their jobs? Where do they come in all this?
They're at
and
home.
I'm a tech geek.
Yeah.
I'm a tech geek, and I do a lot. That's what I do. I do I do well for myself, but I'm just thinking about like the
Maybe
high
that's the
school kid.
role of artificial intelligence, where a human has to take over after a certain point, and most humans, like I forgot the name of Tyler's friend's company that works on that. Is it the one in Manila where like you have to
Yes.
have these massive farms of people
TaskUs.
who,
Artificial intelligence. Yeah.
yeah, where you have to have these massive farms of people that actually scrub over what the AI is telling the others. Like, I'm not sitting down right now, so I can't go through my full thought, but it just seems that the humans have to definitely take over the AI.
Yeah, I feel like everyone in this room is well situated, but I'm just thinking about the next high school kid or the next graduate. I mean, where do they come in to sort of make money if everything is being taken over by AI
Yeah, my take on that
or
is,
machine learning?
yeah,
In the augmented reality world that's coming, bro, right? There's going to be a lot of new jobs that are going to be created for especially people that with skilled workers and people that can craft with their hands and create things when we're going to be interacting with holograms. But that's right now we're in a transition phase. But one of the points I want to bring up, guys, is we keep coming back, what we're talking about. I could tell you intrinsically right now, I mean, I'm doing this open source Oxykit. It is hard, right? What's really hard is the start point. Everybody wants to control, right? It's like, oh, new thing, control. Like our society is structured, as we were talking earlier, like win, control, own, dominate, right? Like the way we're going to get through this is by collaboration. That's the way we need more collaborative systems. And I've been doing this digital work from home thing for like the last decade with distributed folks around the world. It's a good thing, right? But the underlying layer of like and AI is a reflection of humanity. It really is. It's a reflection. Okay, is AI racist? Yeah, well, why? Because the data that it's looking at is freaking racist, dudes, right? At times. So it's a reflection of humanity, and we should look at that like, hey, if there's toxic stuff going on in here, well, what's the source? It's the data, right? So, I just want to kind of mention that, like the future, I think, is very, very, very bright if we could work with decentralization and centralization systems in a effective manner for all of humanity to win. I'm complete.
What's your take, Tyler? You were going to give
I
a
was going to
take.
say, I love YouTube. I spend a good amount of time watching YouTube videos about people who are living fully self-sovereign, independent lives with no money, with no job, so to speak, where there's a bunch of different examples. There's one that I fell in love with recently of this old guy who's now 90 years old, and he's looking for somebody to take over this ranch that he's built in Northern California that he bought 50 years ago with his wife. She's now passed away. And he's built his house. It's with his own garden, with all his own water, with all his own food, and he's built a workshop where he builds stuff out of wood, and he's got all this stuff going on, and he's looking for someone to come take it over because he knows he's going to die soon. And he's been there for like 50, 60 years, and he's built what is, to many people, a kind of palace in the middle, and he owns the land there. When he bought the land, when it was logging land, cost him a few pennies back in the 40s or whatever. And it's amazing what he's done there. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing what this old man has done with his hands by himself, with his wife and no one else. And you look at it like, holy shit. Like, it'd be very rare to find anyone, who can do what these old timers were able to do. And then that's one guy. And I know dozens and dozens. I find new ones every day. And there's people living on a raft that they made out of plastic barrels that they rope together and throw a bunch of reclaimed wood on top of it, and then a tent on top of it for the grand total price of about $200. And they live on a raft, like floating down rivers and using a spear gun and catching fish. And when they get close to land, they go and they kill a rabbit and they eat a rabbit, and they're living a rather luxurious lifestyle with no job, with no income, with no nothing. And they're doing it. And there's lots of people doing this. Lots. And they're now being interviewed and becoming viral YouTube stars because people are watching this being like, holy shit, is this my future? Am I going to be having a house, growing all my own food with all my own energy, with all my own water? But by the way, I am doing exactly that myself, essentially, which Lakeisha can confirm because she just came visit me like yesterday. And I would dare say I'm living a full-on luxurious lifestyle over here and on a piece of paradise with my own food, my own water, my own electricity, and life's good. It's fantastic.
I get
My question would be: would this back up what Facebook went through last week when it was like they tried to fix the problem at Facebook and they couldn't?
Wait, but what Tyler's saying here, hold on a second. Tyler, you should have a session on just that. I get
yeah,
you, man.
Tyler.
I get the whole, dude, I built all this whole thing living in a tent. What I was doing for a year and a half, I lived in a tent with just temporary power.
Yep.
It's great.
Yeah.
When you got less stuff, it is great,
It is
man.
freeing,
You get
yes.
your mind.
Minimalism.
How to do it, dude, would be like, it'd be kind of nice to just jam out on a session with like me, you, there's Ethan, there's a few guys on here. We do this, man, and like let people know how to do
there's
it. I think
another favorite one. There's a couple of dudes on YouTube who, strangely, they're both Australian. I wonder if they know each other, and they make videos quite regularly. They go spearfishing. They pull up on these tiny little islands in the middle of nowhere with nothing, and they come up on the island. It shows what they do every day, and then they go out in the water. They spearfish some fish. They cook it up. They show their whole day, like kind of soup to nuts, and it's just like, holy shit! Like, what a weird way to live. And they do it, and they get by. You need a sailboat or a cheap little boat, and they scoot around and it was got kind of funny during COVID because countries were kicking them out of their little tiny islands. like Cuba forced them out, and then they went over. They had no gas. They have no water. They had to get water from the Colombians came at one point and had to the Colombian what do you call that, the what do you call the people who patrol the oceans to protect their borders, whatever.
Coastal Guard.
Coast Guard came,
Coast Guard.
and his wife was craving carbs because she hadn't had carbs for months because they're just eating fish, so and lobster, and they had a whole bunch of junk food from on their boat, and they gave it to her, and she was like crunching down on junk, processed bagged food, and she was loving it like it was heroin. It was kind of funny, but it's anyway. When I watch,
Hey, can I play devil's? Tyler, can I play devil's advocate?
Of course, yeah.
Real quick. So there's people that live up and down downtown Seattle, for instance, that don't know how to do what you know how to do. Fend for yourself, get your own food.
Yeah.
So these people rely on
correct
businesses thriving. So these restaurants are just suffering.
Yes.
Like if people don't go back to the offices, all of downtown is going to be a ghost town before you know it.
Yeah, go live out. Dude, it's a lot better in nature. By the way, it's not that they don't know how. I mean, you got to put a little effort to learn it.
Exactly.
You gotta.
When it comes to if it comes down to it, you either survival of the fittest. You either will figure out how to do it. It's like that's why I use the domesticated cat or domesticated dog thing. It's like, yeah, maybe you got overly domesticated, and now it's time to be wild again. And some animals know how to readapt to the wild, and some don't. And that's why I'm saying, watch these videos of these humans who have readapted to the wild, and they thrive, absolutely. And there's people up in Alaska, young couples now. I feel like this is going to become a trend because these YouTube videos, you read the comments on them, and people are like, "Holy shit, I want to sell it all and go do what you're doing in Alaska, where they're building a log cabin by themselves with their bare hands, one dude, one girl, with a chainsaw, cutting down trees, boom, 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 boom." It shows them in time lapse build their own house, and then they build a garden, and then they build this, and then they got a dog, and then they go, and they're doing it, and they're living fully off grid.
It's a skills thing.
Look up van
Hang on,
life.
Meher,
Because when you, by the way, they have these YouTube channels. When you after you watch them for a few months, after month 3, it's like watching a video game of like civilization development. You go 3 months into their most recent videos, and now they're building a goddamn hot tub with a fucking wood burning. You get to the real comforts eventually. At first, it's kind of sketchy watching people build this shit, and then after you watch the channel for 3 months in their most recent videos, and now they're building a goddamn hot tub. And then I found a new one yesterday. A dude living up in the northern part of Thailand, in the middle of nowhere, in a little bamboo hut, and then he built a shower, and then he built a hot tub. For some reason, all these people end up building hot tubs around month 3. Because they learn how to
sore as hell from doing it.
Yeah, because they master how to. They start thriving in this off-grid landscape eventually.
Can I pipe in? I pipe in?
Hang on 1 second. 1 second, Chris. I think Sarah was trying to get in.
There's
some. Who was that again? Sorry, Cheryl.
Neda.
Yeah, Neda and Sarah, or I don't know, but there are some other voices trying to
Hi
get
guys.
in there,
Hi.
and I just want to make sure. Yeah.
I was just going to say that it's absolutely, Tyler, what you were just saying. I mean, this is a trend that I'm also seeing. And, I'm hearing it from different parts of the world, from friends and everyone. I mean, I think industries are just they're shifting. So you're going to have to adapt to a new lifestyle that people are longing for. And also, I mean, it started and people are working from home, and a lot of people are going to have to recreate the way, their lifestyles and their work atmosphere and business choices. But I think also why a lot of these people aren't, going back to your previous conversation, a lot of people are not going back, or they're not excited of going back to that workforce because, and I'll say it for mostly on the American culture, but I'm also seeing it everywhere else here because, currently I'm in Turkey, so I'm seeing it everywhere. This, this trend of people wanting to have kind of go back to basics. I mean, I think the lockdown, what it taught all of us is, what once mattered and what once was important to get or grab and be a part of no longer exists to the same level. It may change. It may, we may kind of go back into that same system again. But for now, a lot of people are just kind of looking at their lifestyles and they're looking at what's important and what their quality of life is. And the working atmosphere, especially with the American culture, I mean, I being one of them, I remember I was in my office, not unusual for me to spend the nights in my office sometimes on the couch because I had to deal with, different time zones. I'm dealing with maybe China or Japan or whoever, we had tours going on. And it's not unusual to work 12, 14, 16 hours a day. And it got to the point where sometimes if you don't do it, and if you're not keeping up with the Joneses, you really feel like you're going to miss out on something. And what's happening is that people are now just saying, you know what, and why a lot of these people, as you guys were saying before, they're not coming back to the workforce because something needs to be looked at. People don't want to go back because they don't enjoy it. Why don't they enjoy it? Because they don't feel that they're having a good quality of life. There's no balance. And I think the bigger picture here is that the people are asking for, longing for, demanding for some sort of a balance in life where they actually can, work and pay for their bills and be part of the workforce, but also, you know, uh, give back to themselves. Their quality of life wasn't good. If it was good, people wouldn't want to not go back to work. If they enjoyed their atmosphere, if they enjoyed their relationship with their bosses or their authorities or the upper ups or just felt like maybe they are climbing the ladder where there's so many other isms and cultural issues to look at and understand why these people don't want to go back. So the quality of life was not at all, and that's the area to look at. So what can you do to give people a quality of life that they want to go back to the workforce? And also now, exactly like you said, Tyler, I'm seeing it everywhere throughout my own friends. I mean, people are going out of the cities. They're going to places where they're teaching themselves farming. They are even talking about what is it, like a bartering system with friends and families and maybe creating something of a community of themselves. So there's something going on. Is this temporary because of what's been going on with the pandemic and the lockdown? Or, is this a new trend that's going to continue and change and shift our lives and our cultures? I mean, that's still to be seen, but something, and there's industries there that are completely, if they're able to kind of maneuver their systems, they're the ones that are going to win in the long run. Because what's going on is that people are asking for a better quality of life versus this complete money, money, money only, first business, business, 24-hour working, and this capitalism that's gone to the extreme side where you're kind of forgetting your identity. I think that's kind of what people are standing up against, and that's what we're experiencing.
We got to end it. We got to end it there. It's a little 6 minutes early. But check out Off-Grid Living on YouTube, and you will see a whole bunch of people living fully off-grid, and it's a whole different lifestyle completely. Which, watch them, see if you think they're happy or not, and I think it's going to become a massive trend. Anyway, and some of them are.
Can I get 1 minute? Just
yeah.
I didn't get a chance to say this earlier. So, I know a lot of people like to say, hey, look, we're all up here, we're privileged, we're upper class, but I'm not. I come from lower class, okay? I worked myself out of I watched my mom work herself out of poverty as a waitress. She was able to buy the restaurant that she worked at to put me through college. I learned how to become an engineer. I taught myself how to do CAD, CAM, CNC. CNC is the milling. So I had, in my garage when the crisis happened, I was one of a few people on the planet that had a CNC machine in their garage that could respond to the ventilator crisis. And again, this isn't about me, but what I'm trying to get at is there are opportunities for our future. It's in manufacturing. Like I'm now CEO of a startup, but I still get all these emails from the companies. It's called Xometry. If you guys look it up, it's a sourcing company. If you need parts made, they will make parts for you and they send it. It's like the Uber for machined parts. I literally get $20,000 in orders every day coming through my email. And I can't take them, because I'm focusing on something else. And for someone in the middle class like me, that's a humongous opportunity cost I'm giving up. And the fact that much work is coming across my desk tells me that there's a huge manufacturing shortage. So if we want to talk about the future, we really need to gear up our future for being able to take more technical jobs on, more vocational jobs on, programming the robots, programming the CNCs, programming the 3D printers, programming the AI. That's where we got to go, folks. Otherwise, we're going to stagnate and complain about jobs that unfortunately are based in service. And I come from service, so I love it. Okay, customer service is key to me, but we have to be willing to upskill. And I'll shut up now.
I'm watching a video right now on YouTube called Primitive Bushcraft Solo, and it's this single 40-year-old Asian lady in the jungle, building, chopping down little trees, making herself a little house, and catching fish, and then them flopping out of her hands, and then she's getting 100% solo by herself, and building a house. It's a very it's wild.
Do high school kids have to be tech geniuses just to get a high school job at this rate, Chris?
You don't have to be a tech genius. You're literally hitting a green button. You're loading a piece of metal into a machine. You're closing a vise. You're performing deburring operations. As you move up, you start out as an apprentice, but as you move up, they trust you because these machines are, mine's a cheap one. It's 70,000, but some of these are $500 million machines. And, if they don't have people to program and make parts, you got to start somewhere.
Hey guys, I just want to be respectful to Tyler.
Yeah, I got to run.
He said he needed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
But we will meet again